Hi everyone, welcome back to Gavin Reads It All. There is a brand new Hunger Games book coming out this month, and it is my most anticipated book of 2025. And so I've decided that I'm going to reread the entire Hunger Games series before that one comes out. And then during this vlog as well, I will also read the brand new book. I am so excited, like you cannot understand like how excited I am for the new Hunger Games book. I'm also trying to level my expectations so that I'm not going to be too disappointed going into it if it doesn't like meet my unrealistic expectations. But the Hunger Games itself is like one of my favorite books of all time. The series is one of my favorite series of all time. It got me properly well back into reading back in, I want to say 2012, I think, when the first movie came out. In 2010-11, I started to lose interest in reading, but then I read the first Hunger Games book and I just blasted through them all. Blasted through every single one of them at the time. I'm not even worried about the possibility that maybe I might not like them as much upon a reread. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. I know I'm going to love these again. Well, I mean, I liked the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It wasn't my favorite. My expectations for that one were way too high. But the original trilogy, absolute perfection. Absolute perfection. Hello, Tobu. Do you want to come say hello? Oh, Tammy's ran. So this video will be filled with spoilers and I will be going through the original, the Hunger Games book. And then I'll go into Catching Fire. And then I'll round out the original trilogy with Mockingjay. Then I will go into the prequel book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which came out in 2020. And then I will get to the new book, Sunrise on the Reaping, when that comes out. It's currently March 9th and it is due to come out on March 18th. And that is in 9 days time. So the countdown is truly on. And I want to get these read before that one comes out. So on release day, I can go to the bookstore, I can pick it up and start reading it like right there and then, essentially. I also bought this box set of books like 2 days before the announcement of the 5th book. And I swear to God, if they do not release the 5th book looking like this, I'm going to be so mad. I am going to be so mad. I hope Under the Dust Jacket of the 5th book will look like this. I really, really do. Please, 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 please. And if you do not know what the Hunger Games is about, it is a dystopian young adult series. Hiya, Tobu. Are you come to say hello? I got him. Say hello. Say hello, Tobu. What's that? Is that you? Is that you? Who is it? Is that you? Look at the camera. Look, camera. It's you. It's you. Look, 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 look. Oh, it's you. Sorry, we follow Katniss Everdeen and she lives in District 13. This is in a world where all of the places are split into districts and there is a capital, and the capital make all of the districts send 2 kids into the Hunger Games from each district and they have to fight to the death. That was probably like a really shit way of telling you what the series is about. But you know what? You know what it's about. I don't need to repeat myself. Tobu, get off that. That is mahogany. So yeah, let's get straight into it. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. And let's start the first book, The Hunger Games. Can I quickly show you my most prized possession ever? It is a copy of the Hunger Games book that is actually personalized and dedicated to me, signed by Suzanne Collins. Huge thank you to my friend Allie for sending me this a couple of years ago now. It really is my most prized possession and I had to show it in this video. I just love it so, so much. For Gavin, may the odds be ever in your favor. Love, Suzanne Collins. Like, I'm getting buried with this, by the way. Make sure you tell my parents that when I die, I want to be buried with this. And this alone. It is the next day. I have not even started the Hunger Games yet. Yesterday, it was just a little bit too chaotic. I had a book club live show at 8 p.m. So I wanted to focus on that first before I really got settled down to read this, because I just want to immerse myself in this world again. I want to have like nothing else to worry about as I'm enjoying the story again. And if you hear a lot of banging as well, my cats are fighting upstairs. Also, it's not even 1 p.m. yet and I've got all the lights on in the living room because it's that dark. It's very overcast in the UK right now and I'm so ready to just settle down, read this. I have also made myself a lovely oat milk cappuccino to get started as well. I think I will just read physically, like without the audiobook to begin with, just to get a vibe and get a feel again. And then I might, you know, do the tandem read of reading the physical and the audiobook in like a couple of hours time if I feel like I need to. And if I want to drown out the sounds of my cats fighting. But yeah, let's go back to Panem, Panem. I hear it and I know. This place is
love, but we don't need to use our words. I wanna see what's underneath that t-shirt.
This is just so good already. I've only read the first chapter. It's a long first chapter, but you know when you just get a sense of just like a really great, entertaining story? That is exactly what this first chapter does. It just draws you in so amazingly. And one of the things about it is it's just so ominous. Like, you don't really get to know everything about it until like pretty much nearly the end of the chapter. Like, things are sprinkled in throughout, so you hear about the reaping, you hear about the Hunger Games, but you actually don't know what they are until we get to like the event of the reaping, and it's only like 20 pages. The first chapter is like 20 pages, and it is just so gripping. It is so gripping. We get to meet Katniss. It is the day of the reaping. We meet her mother. We meet her little sister Prim. And there's just like an automatic connection. I will say though, Katniss Everdeen, she literally on page 4, it says that she tried to drown a kitten. Like, obviously, like, Buttercup hates Katniss. I would hate her too if she tried to drown me in a friggin' bucket when I was a kitten. But yeah, he hates me, or at least distrusts me, even though it was years ago. I think he still remembers how I tried to drown him in a bucket when Prim brought him home. Scrawny kitten, belly swollen with worms, crawling with fleas. If this was any other character than Katniss, I would hate her. Like, I would genuinely, anybody who tries to kill an animal, an innocent, poor animal, get in the bin. But like, I know Katniss, I know she's not a bad person, and she didn't want another mouth to feed. Like, this world, like, that she is found herself living in, District 12, they don't have a lot, and they are forced into these roles that they don't really want, and it keeps them poor, keeps them hungry. They go to bed starving, and I can really feel that through this. So while I don't love the fact that she tried to drown a kitten, and that's one of like, the first things we find out about her too, I'm like, we are off on the wrong foot, Katniss. But I already love like how this book starts. You just hear the descriptions of District 12 as well. Like, it says that separating the meadow from the woods, in fact enclosing all of District 12, is a high chain link fence topped with barbed wire loops. And like, there's different things that you find out about it that's just like, this is sounding more sinister as we are going on. Like, why is there a massive fence around District 12? And like, why is it around their home? Why are they being like forced to stay in this place? And it just sounds so sinister. We don't even really get an info dump of things. Like, Panem is mentioned but not gone into. The Hunger Games is mentioned but not gone into, as Katniss is meeting up with Gale. So I don't know if I was ever a Katniss and Gale shipper. I think I was a Katniss and Peter shipper back in the day. I read these books so fast when I first read them that I don't think I had time to process shipping people. And it was mainly like through the movies. You know, like it was like Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson. You know, it was like Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson. I can't say his name. It was Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, and oh, I love Josh Hutcherson. Like, he was so cute. Like, I had such a big crush on him. So I can't even remember like who I really shipped, but like, I don't feel anything romantic with Gale. I feel like it's more of a brother-sister dynamic, in just like how protective and how amazing Gale is with Katniss. They do have great banter. They even take the piss out of Effie. And may the odds be ever in your favor. I just love the fact that they have this rapport with one another. But yeah, Katniss does say there's never been anything romantic between Gale and me. And I believe her. I believe her. Like, it's absolutely okay to have like a really good platonic friend between like a straight man and a straight woman. Those friendships can exist. So I do kind of like the idea of that with Gale and Katniss. I genuinely can't remember if Gale and Katniss ever got closer romantically. I can't quite remember if that ever happened. So reading the series again for the first time in probably a decade is going to be a little bit of a revelation for the things I've forgotten about. They do suggest running away together. You would think was romantic, but it's like really not. But yeah, I love the law. I love the whole reaping system. I mean, when I say I love it, I don't mean like, oh, let's enforce this in the real world. I mean, like, I love how creative it can be. Obviously, like, the Hunger Games is a little bit like Battle Royale, and there's like other things. I think maybe the lottery or something. Like, a lot of things have like blended into one, but I still love like how creative it can be and the way that Suzanne Collins utilizes it in the Hunger Games. So yeah, the fact that you are eligible for the reaping the day you turn 12, and then your name's entered once, but then every year your name gets entered more times, and then you can also opt to add it in even more in exchange for Tesserae. So there's like even more like sinister incentives to include your child's name into this reaping thing, just to live, just to survive. Which now, already from like this very first chapter, I've already got a sense of the fact that the Capitol are keeping these people oppressed. They are starving. They will do anything to get food and to not die of hunger, in the really awful position that they're all in. Like, they can't move from this awful position. I also love the fact that Prim in all of this is said to be the safest person from this treatment because her name is only in there once. And Katniss's name is in there so many times. Gail's name is in there so many times. So I love the fact that throughout this chapter, they're saying, oh, Prim's going to be safe. Prim's got nothing to worry about. Even Prim herself is more scared for Katniss than herself, you know? Loved the little backstory on Panem. Again, like, it didn't info dump. It didn't overwhelm me as a reader, but I love the fact that it talks about District 13 already. Like, this is the very first chapter of the entire series in District 13, and it being obliterated during the dark days, the uprising of the districts against Capital. That was obliterated, and that's mentioned now. And I know it comes up later on. Like, I know it comes up later on. So I love the fact that this world feels like imagined and like it was properly planned for. Because it's like the first chapter. Rules of the Hunger Games are simple. In punishment for the uprising, each of the 12 districts must provide one girl and one boy called tributes to participate. And then they must fight to the death. And the way that Katniss like kind of reveals this feels almost detached in a way, like almost desensitized to it. Because, you know, if I found this out was like a real thing, like this was actually happening in the world, I'd have no words. But this is such a reality for Katniss that the way that she says it, it's just like, this is the reality. This is what we put up with. Bon appetit. If you lift a finger, we will destroy every last one of you, just as we did in District 13. The Capitals sound like arseholes. They sound like arseholes. And the fact that they have to make this all a celebration. We meet Haymitch as well, who will be the main character, I believe, in Sunrise on the Reaping, the new book. So excited. I'm so fucking excited. So I love the fact that he was also, you know, revealed in the very, very first chapter as a previous victor. So excited to see his Hunger Games. Oh, you have no idea. Happy Hunger Games. May the odds be ever in your favor. And I love the way that the first chapter ends. Like, I'm not going to update after every chapter. I might update like every time I finish a part because it's split into a few parts. So this is part 1, the tributes. But I love the fact that we ended chapter 1 with every drinker crosses to the podium, smooths a slip of paper, and reads out the name in a clear voice. And it's not me. It's Primrose Everdeen. Oh, like, what a great first chapter. If you were doing a first chapter challenge, how could you not want to continue after that? Like, how could you not? This was the best idea I had this year. In fact, this is the best idea I've had since joining BookTube, rereading the Hunger Games. It was the best. Oh my God, I fucking love it. Can I just say, I feel so awful for Peter. So Peter's name has just been read. And I totally forgot about this because I don't know if we find out in the movies or not. And again, it's been a year since I read this. But when Peter's name is read out, Effie asks for volunteers, but no one steps forward. He has 2 older brothers. I know, I've seen them in the bakery. But one is probably too old now to volunteer and the other won't. I'm just like, oh, like that's so sad. Say if my brother got announced to be like the tribute, I would volunteer as tribute. I would 100% protect my brother. But the fact that Peter's own brother doesn't is so sad. That is so sad. Like, I already feel so sorry for Peter. The way that we meet Peter is just in a state of emotion because like everything is happening and something terrible is going to happen to him and he's being picked to do these Hunger Games, which is awful. So your empathy reaches out to Peter straight away and he's a character you feel sorry for before you really get to know him. So I'm very excited to see like how his characterization progresses as the book series goes on. But I really do. I feel so awful right now. The fact that Katniss volunteered as tribute for her sister and Peter's own brother won't volunteer for him. Like, it's just so sad. I also didn't realize this, but Katniss's birthday is on the 8th of May. Mine is on the 7th of May. So me and Katniss are nearly birthday twins. Caesar. So here's what you do. You win, you go home. She continued down then, eh? I don't think it's going to work out. Winning won't help in my case, says Peter. Why ever not, says Caesar, mystified. Peter blushes beet red and stammers out, because she came here with me. Oh my God. I wish I was reading this for the first time again. I really do, because that moment, well, even then, rereading that bit, rereading the whole interview sequences, it just chills. Again, I'm so riveted. Like, I know what happens. I know, well, for the majority of it. Like, I remember, like, the important bits. I remember how I felt when I first read that. Like, this is so hooking. It hooks you. What do you mean that you can't ask the girl out who you fancy, who you have a thing for, because she came here with you? Oh, like, if I was watching this on TV and I was in the Capitol, I would gasp. Just like, even just reading it, I'm not in the Capitol. I'm not, I promise. I still gasped at that. It's just such good television. It's good drama. Like, Peter knows how to work a camera, which is one of the things I love about this, is the distrust or mistrust. The fact that Katniss doesn't fully trust Peter. And honestly, as a reader, sometimes I don't know exactly what he's doing. Like, is he playing for the cameras? Does he actually have feelings for Katniss? The way that he interacts with her, is there an ulterior motive? You know, it's so good. It's so good. Like, I do wish that I'd never read the series before, so I could read this for the first time and not know Peter's motivations and not know what is in his heart, because there is a good argument to be had that he is going a different direction. I do think Katniss sometimes, but, you know, like, you can understand, but like, Katniss sometimes, she misjudges and she automatically assumes things. But due to Katniss's upbringing and her life, especially her complicated relationship with her mother, like, that distrust, it really does come into play so many times. And I love the fact that this story, right, it's so fast. We are in the plot, like, so much has already happened and we aren't slowing down whatsoever. But what I love about it is that we are thrust into the plot, but we are getting flashbacks every now and then to, for instance, when Katniss first met Gale, but also when Katniss's mother kind of let her down, like, after her father's death, and she had to step in as the sort of mother figure for Prim and essentially keep her and her sister alive, and her mother. Like, she had to keep all of them alive. And so getting those flashbacks during this, as all of this plot is going on, it's just such a fantastic way of telling this story. It's not boring because we are still getting all of the exciting stuff around that, and it's just adding more context to Katniss as a character. So her mistrusting or distrusting, I'm going to have to look it up, her not trusting Peter, it fits. Like, it feels like a natural thing for her to do. So I am already loving the characterization of Katniss. I like Peter as well. I did feel so bad for him. I felt so sorry for him. But I also love the fact that he did show kindness to Katniss when he gave her the bread. Like, he took a beating from his mother to feed Katniss and her family, and that was so generous and so nice. But obviously, like, with this being such a hardened world, Katniss is wondering, oh, is there an ulterior motive behind that or anything like that? It's just so fascinating. It was also fascinating as well about the Avox that she sees. Oh, there's a kitty cat in my garden. Oh, I get so many of them, I don't know why I'm surprised. Oh yeah, the Avox. I forgot all about the backstory there and how Katniss and Gale watched this girl and this guy. They were running from the capital, but the hovercraft thing came and got them, killed the boy. She's now an Avox, cut her tongue out. I forgot all about that. I forgot all about the guilt that Katniss has. So Katniss, she is saying every now and then about complacency and people watching her, you know, and just like kind of rooting for her death in a way. Like, people are just watching all of this happen and not do anything about it. So we have those things happening. And yet with this flashback that we got from Katniss, and the shame that she feels for not doing anything when that girl looked at her, because there was a brief moment when they saw each other and the girl asked for help and Katniss didn't do anything. And so Katniss does feel the implications of what happens when you don't do something, when you see horror unfold, when you don't step in to stop something bad from happening. So like, all of that is so fantastic to explore because the themes of that, the ideas of it as well, like the complacency and seeing bad things happen and doing nothing about it, is like a huge prominent thing in the Hunger Games, obviously, because of what's actually happening. Like, seeing a 12-year-old girl, like Rue, we met Rue. Oh, I love her already. Like, I know what's coming. I know what's coming. So I'm trying not to get attached again. But how can you sit and watch this poor little girl talk on television about how they're going to have to catch her to kill her? Yeah, she says, I'm very hard to catch, like when she's talking to Caesar, very hard to catch. And if they can't catch me, they can't kill me, so don't count me out. And Caesar says, I wouldn't in a million years. And it's like, that's heartbreaking. Like, how are people watching this be televised and not, you know, have their hearts broken? Hearing this young girl talk about, oh, people are going to try and kill me, but I want to try and be hard to catch. Like, how can you just like sit there and say that on television and it's going to happen? You know what I mean? It just, it's so heartbreaking, so devastating. You do get to see like more of like the kind of propaganda that the Capitol have like shown everyone in order to like make them the way they are, because even Katniss struggles with the idea that, oh, you know, like some of them aren't that bad, like some of them are genuinely trying to help me, like the stylists in Cinna as well. Oh my god, I love Cinna so much. Like the way that he is like one of the first people who Katniss actually likes in the Capitol, and she can kind of trust him in a way, and when he gives her advice to help with the interview. Oh, like that was such a touching moment as well, because it's almost like he's come across as a kind of father figure in a way, which obviously Katniss hasn't had for a long time. So obviously that breaks my heart, because again, I know what happens to Cinna. I also like that Haymitch is stepping up as well. I can't remember too much about like his reasons why he drinks so much, but I do think it's because he's trying to dull the pain of what he is being forced to do himself. Like he's also been forced to watch these kids die, and he's like forced to be a mentor to, you know, the District 12 tributes, and he's saying to Katniss and Peter, "Oh, you're the first ones in a long time who've shown promise." And I can imagine like year after year after year getting to know these kids and seeing them die. That takes a toll on you. So I'm really paying attention to Haymitch in this book, especially since we have the new one coming out. So it'll be such a great contrast to see what he was like in his own Hunger Games compared to like what he is like when he is being a mentor to other people during their Hunger Games. So I think it's going to be like, again, a fantastic book. But yeah, I'm paying attention to all of those. I really like Effie as well, even though like she is, of course, part of the problem. You can tell she's starting to break down as well. Like, is in, like, her character isn't as ruthless or as cold and calculating as people in the Capitol are. Like, she even giggles a little bit when Katniss had her session, her private session with the Game Masters, and she tells him that she shot the arrow through the pig's apple. Even Effie, like, kind of smiled a little bit, and it's kind of nice to see her character breaking down as well, and, like, not seeing her as this really, like, awful monster. And there's, like, more levels to it, there's more layers to it, and I love that. You know, this isn't the kind of story that's like beautifully detailed or anything like that. It's very direct. The writing style is very direct, very accessible, but you can see what the author is trying to do in terms of themes and character growth in arcs very well through the way that the characters talk, their dialogue, in those little moments where they maybe just smile a little bit, or the way that they look away, or some, you know, there's just like so many little things that Suzanne Collins does that is just like so beautiful. Like, you don't need all the flowery language in the world or anything like that to convey character journeys and character arcs. Suzanne Collins, she's doing a great job. She's doing a bang-up job. And this is very well written. Like, I'm not saying it's not. It's greatly written. It's so engaging. I love how direct it is, because we are just going forward, 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 and we aren't stopping. It's great. It's so good. Oh, another reason why I love Effie as well is when she says to the people, because she has been kind of trying to get Katniss and Peter sponsors, but obviously she can't like really do that because that's Haymitch's job. But she was telling people, well, if you put enough pressure on coal, it turns to pearls. Like, come on, Effie. But like, she's trying. Like, she even looks so proud of herself. Like, Effie beams at us so brilliantly that we have no choice but to respond enthusiastically to her cleverness, even though it's wrong. Like, she's just trying, and I love that so much. I love that Peter is, again, still showing kindness to Katniss. So I'm definitely team penis. I really do think that they have something there, because it's not as straightforward as a romance, like a normal romance. And I don't usually pay attention that much to romances, to be honest. Like, that's not really what I read stories for. But when there is a romance within a story and it's just like more plot than anything else, then I don't mind it as much. And yeah, I definitely think I am team penis. Yes. That is their ship name, right? That is it has to be, because the other one would be Kata. Team Kata. No, I much prefer penis. I like penis. I like the way it feels in my mouth. It just rolls off the tongue better, you know? And after that bombshell, after we dropped that bombshell at the end of that interview, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So I am now about to start part 2, the games. Ugh, yeah, we motherfucking go. One more moment that I absolutely loved. After Katniss shot the arrow at the game makers, and she was like, thank you for your consideration. Fucking love that. She is a badass. One thing I know about Katniss is that she is a badass. In her fashion, the girl on fire, oh, like, there's just so many iconic things that have already happened. Like, iconic things, stands the test of time. It's rooted in our popular culture, in our minds now. Freaking love it so far. Perfection. Oh, Miss Collins, you have some crimes that you must answer to. Finish part 2. It's not easy. Even upon a reread, even after seeing the movies, it's still not easy saying what happens to Rue. How dare you? There is still so much to talk about first. Hi, Ash, do you want to say hello? Because I'm a little bit upset right now. Yeah, here's Ash. Here's my other baby. You've met Tobu. Here's Ash. Ash is not as social He's a daddy's boy, but he's not as social. We get thrown into the games itself. Like, it is brutal. The cornucopia bit, where it's like a proper bloodbath, is just brutal. There's like 12 people who die on the first day. I have to put myself in the position of Katniss, because when we started, it almost feels like you're part of it too. And then you have to wonder, what would I do in that situation? Would I run to the cornucopia bit where there is so many supplies that could help me? Or do I like run away? And Katniss has this moment where she's like, oh, there's like a bow and arrow there. Like, I could grab those. That could really help. But then you see so many people, especially those from like the districts and like District 1, District 2, District 3, 4, like they are preparing for this. Like, they have been waiting for this probably their whole lives. Like, they've been trained for it. Like, they seem to have fun doing this. So, like, do you risk it? Do you risk it with crazy people like that also there, like, ready to kill you? So I'm like, what would I do in this situation? Like, I could not imagine having to be part of the Hunger Games. I couldn't imagine it. It would be too awful. Too awful. I don't think I would last. I don't think I would last, mainly because I don't think I could do any of the survival stuff. This has been very realistic in terms of the survival stuff. Whenever Katniss gets an injury, she treats it, and we actually see the whole process of her treating it. We see what happens when she gets hungry and she has to hunt and get things. I would say, like, I'm not as interested in those aspects of the book, but it does really still help to keep this as realistic as possible. Because if Katniss could suddenly, you know, like, she gets injured and she has to, like, say that wall of fire, she got injured from that. Say if she had just like walked away from it unscathed, or like we saw the burn on her leg and she was just like fine the next minute, that would have been so unrealistic. It would have probably taken me out of the story. So I do appreciate the fact that we have such an in-depth look into treating her wounds and like getting things sorted for it in the kind of creative ways of doing that too. A lot of like wilderness kind of stuff. Like, I was never part of the Scouts. I never learned how to look after myself in the woods, so I definitely will be dead by now in the Hunger Games. But I do appreciate that we do get to see Katniss do it, but it's not my favourite parts of this book. Saying that though, it's still so very fast-paced. When we found out that Peter was part of the like careers, like the actual tributes who have like banded together, I was shocked because I totally forgot that from the first time reading this book, from the movie. I forgot that even happened. So when we hear Peter's voice and kind of like, oh my god, that's Peter's voice, I was shocked. I felt bamboozled by that. I was like, what do you mean Peter was sleeping with the enemy? So I, again, found that so exciting. When Katniss cuts the wasp nest, which is actually tracker jackers, and I forgot actually about the mutations, like the mutated creatures, insects, animals that the Capitol have done, because we've heard about them in... Oh, I know that's not Ash having a shit right now, is I'm about to talk about Rue's death in a minute. What I'm building up to in part 2, my children. I'm about to put you in the Hunger Games. Yeah, they've done like mutations, whatever you call them. I, again, find that so interesting that that was mentioned so early on in this book too. It was mentioned earlier, and yeah, to have the tracker jackers, like the Mockingjays as well, being like mutations. It's all so rich. Like, the world isn't really like fully expanded on. We do get little bits and pieces of it, especially since this is dystopian. But to get like little bits of information, like stuff about District 13, the mutations and all of that, is just so fascinating because it makes this world feel that much more real. Like, it's not just enclosed in this one instance of like the Hunger Games happening. It's not just enclosed on this one plot, but it's actually like branched out, and I can feel that be more alive through every single chapter that we have, because Suzanne Collins keeps dropping little things, like little Easter eggs and nuggets of information here and there. So I loved all the stuff with the tracker trackers. I hate Kato so much. I forgot how much I hated him, actually. Like, he's the kind of person, like, you know, like a zombie apocalypse. He would be one of the people who would gladly kill other humans and feel great about it, because there's like no law anymore, no police or anything like that. So like, he was the kind of person who would thrive in something like a zombie apocalypse, just like he seems to be thriving in the Hunger Games. So I just freaking loved it when, you know, because Rue was the one who mentioned the tracker jackers to Katniss helping save her. Hi Ash, she got a shitty ass. I love the fact that Rue helped Katniss and, you know, she saved her in a way, and Katniss ends up protecting Rue. And she kind of sees Rue, and she even calls her Prim by accident at one point. But like, she sees her as Prim, and so she wants to protect her. She wants to save her. You know, Rue is so young. She's too young to be here. And again, like, the injustice of it all, the brutality of it all. And it's so cute when Rue and Katniss have to like share the sleeping bag, and Rue like cuddles up to her. And it just feels like Katniss is acting like her older sister, just like she would Prim. It's so heartbreaking, especially since, you know, that not everyone is going to make it out alive. And so you have this sinking dread that Rue is gonna die. I feel like as soon as they became friends, I was like, shit, like, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt when they have to depart. Unexpectedly, Rue throws her arms around me. I only hesitate a moment before I hug her back. And like, there's just like such a genuine care for one another. And so it's like so nice that they had each other, even if it was just for a little bit. But actually, to talk about the Trucker Chuckers as well, it was quite brutal the way that Glimmer died. Like, technically, that was Katniss's like first kill, was the girl from District 4 and Glimmer. So it was interesting that Katniss didn't really like confront that to begin with, but she does in a second. She does in a second because she does like a direct kill. But like the end of chapter 17, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it honestly feels like a lifetime has passed. But to hear Rue's 4-note tune coming from the Mockingjays, and then you hear her scream, and it's like, oh. And then we end the chapter. She just has time to reach her hand through the mesh and say my name before the spear enters her body. And that's how you end the freaking chapter. It would have been more cruel, I think, if Suzanne had have ended the entire part, like part 2 on that bit. But no, we have one more chapter just to, like, you know, twist the knife in. The boy from District 1 dies before he can pull out the spear. My arrow drives deeply into the center of his neck. So this is Katniss's like first direct kill. But obviously she doesn't have like time to ruminate on that because poor Rue is dying. She is dying. She's so young. And Rue says, don't go. She tightens her grip on my hand. Of course not, staying right here, I say. And then she wants her to sing. But if this is Rue's last request, I have to at least try. There are so many parallels between Prim and Rue. When we get to Mockingjay, don't you worry, I will talk about that. But then she sings. The Mockingjays take up the song as well. So like, you just picture like how beautiful this moment is. Despite how like heartbreaking it is, you can also feel like how beautiful it is too. Rue's cannon fires. I lean forward and press my lips against her temple. Slowly, as if not to wake her, I lay her head back on the ground and release her hand. Like, fuck me. Oh, but I love the fact that she directs her anger. Like, this is now the turning point. This is the turning point. No more can Katniss just sit by and watch things happen and allow innocent people to die. She now directs her anger at the right person or the right place, and that's the Capitol. President Snow has barely been mentioned in this. He appears once, and that's about it. Like, President Snow has not really come up very much or at all. So she is like directing her anger at the Capitol in general. Rue's death has forced me to confront my own fury against the cruelty, the injustice they inflict upon us. There's no way to take revenge on the Capitol, is there? So we get the first inklings of a rebellion. We sniff it. I want to do something right here, right now to shame them, to make them accountable, to show the Capitol that whatever they do or force us to do, there is a part of every tribute they can't own. That Rue was more than a piece in the games. And so am I. I press the 3 middle fingers of my left hand against my lips and hold them out in her direction. Powerful, powerful stuff. And even Katniss getting the bread from District 11. So this is the first time that a tribute has gotten a gift from a different district. So for whatever reason, this is a district gift to a tribute who's not your own. But that again is a turning point, because that means the districts can work together. They are on each other's side. It's showing that they can support one another and maybe make change, potentially. Like the whole implications of this chapter in Rue's death. Like, Rue's death was so important to start this rebellion, to ignite the spark that Katniss needed in order to have a clear goal on where she needs to take her journey next. Now I'm determined to avenge her, to make her loss unforgettable, and I can only do that by winning and thereby making myself unforgettable. She realizes that the boy she killed was her first kill. Technically, credit for Glimmer and the girl from District 4, but the boy from District 1 was the first person I knew would die of my actions. So we've also seen Katniss do something that, again, like, she was forced to do. Obviously, the boy from District 1 killed Rue, so obviously we hate him for doing so, but again, like, he was put in that position too because of the Capitol. It all comes back to the Capitol. I just freaking loved this part. It's just been like so sad, and it's just been rife with drama as well. We end the part with Claudius Templesmith's voice doing an announcement that there's been a rule change. Under the new rule, both tributes from the same district will be declared winners if they are the last 2 alive. 2 tributes can win this year. If they're from the same district, both can live, both of us can live. Before I can start myself, I call out Peter's name at end of part 2. So that gives us hope that we won't have to say goodbye to Peter, because I feel like in our heart of hearts, we knew that Katniss would win the Hunger Games, but now there is the potential that Peter could also win alongside her. So we haven't seen Peter in a while, and he has some splaining to do. So I'm excited to get to his part. Will he be camouflage? Did he have time to camouflage himself against some rocks by painting his face or whatnot? I actually can't really remember how the rest of this book goes. I can't really remember. I remember the end, and obviously like this is a whole spoiler filled, so I remember the berries. I remember this bit of confrontation with like Cato and stuff, and I remember Katniss getting to Peter and him being, you know, camouflaged. I remember that, but like there's so much from like the last quarter of the book and the movie that I just can't really quite remember. It has been so long since I watched the movie too. I'm going to do a movie night with my patrons this week for the first Hunger Games film. This has just made me want to watch it like tonight. I made myself a decaf coffee for tonight, and I managed to steal the nice comfortable seat from Ash, and I am about to start part 3, which is called The Victor. I'm not ready for this reread of the first book to be over, to be honest. And I also have some snacks and condoms. So I have some pomegranate seeds that I'm going to be dipping into, and some crunchy carrots with a hummus dip. Very nice, very healthy. Okay, I finished the first Hunger Games book last night. I was there with my decaf coffee, and it was just like the best time. I will say I didn't like fully love part 3 over parts 1 and 2 in this book, so it might surprise you to know that I'm not going to give this one 5 stars, and I will get to why, because there are a few reasons why it's like not the most perfect book, but it is like close enough. I do absolutely genuinely adore the first Hunger Games book. It is so exciting, so riveting. Part 3, it does get a little bit bogged down by Katniss looking after Peter. So as soon as she like reunites with him and she realizes he has like blood poisoning and she's like trying to nurse him back to health, the action and the pacing of the story does come to a grinding halt. And while we do get, you know, a lot more interaction between Peter and Katniss, which is very much needed when you have this like budding romance that's happening, although I still don't really know what's like fully real and what's not real, I do choose to believe that Peter genuinely does care for Katniss and he does probably love her. Like, even though at times you kind of wonder, like, oh, is that story that he told about when he fell in love with her like genuine? And I feel like Katniss, because I feel like I'm doubting certain things every now and then because so much of it is played for the cameras, and that's what like fucks with your mind, which is why I totally understand the confusion Katniss feels and why I understand why Peter acts a little bit, I guess, childish by the end when Katniss isn't sure of her own feelings and Peter feels hurt by that. I can understand like how both of them are just so confused. You know, it's such an intense situation. They are teenagers at the end of the day as well, so I do give a lot of grace there. But yeah, going back to when Katniss finally reunites with Peter and he's camouflaged somehow, and he's like the way that like, you could just see his eyes and teeth, it sounds so ridiculous in terms of like this whole stadium and what's going on with the Hunger Games. Just the fact that he had time to like paint his entire body and stuff to make himself look like part of the landscape. It's just so funny to me. But yeah, as much as I do love the realism of like how long it takes to finally get back to health and looking after him, I do get that, you know, going through the forest looking for food. But all of those things, it does get a little bit repetitive because those are the things that Katniss has had to deal with since starting the games. It does feel like it's starting to slow the story down, and I'm not as excited or thrilled by it. But I do still like the idea of like finding a romance or like falling in love with someone when you're in this like really high stakes situation. And especially since Katniss, she does realize how much I don't want him to die. And it's not about the sponsors, it's not about what will happen back home. It's not just that I don't want to be alone, it's him. I do not want to lose the boy with the bread. There is a genuine care inside of Katniss for Peter, and that can develop into romance, it can develop into genuine feelings, which is exactly what I think is happening here. But I like the ambiguity of it as well, because we aren't just getting a direct like, yes, Katniss has fallen in love. It's actually a lot more complex and complicated than that. This is the first case that we're both fully aware of. Neither of us hobbled by sickness or pain or simply unconsciousness. Our lips neither burning with fever or icy cold. This is the first case where I actually feel a stirring inside my chest, warm and curious. This is the first kiss that makes me want another. And she does like wonder about Gale as well. And, you know, like, again, like nothing's romantic has happened between them. They are just like very good friends. But she does wonder like, oh, what would Gale think of this? Like, what would he think of all the kissing? Because Gale isn't part of like the Hunger Games. He doesn't know what they're doing. Maybe he can tell. I can't remember actually in Catching Fire if he is like, oh yeah, I could tell like you were just doing it for the cameras. I can't remember if he does that or not. Or like if he gets jealous. But like part of me like really hopes not, because I do like the idea of Katniss and Gale being platonic and being like genuinely just good friends. But I can understand like all the confusion of this situation. And you know what, there are some genuine like sweet sweet moments, which again, I don't know sometimes if it's really just genuinely for the cameras. I remember everything about you, says Peter. You're the one who wasn't paying attention. I am now, I say. Well, I don't have much competition here, he says. You don't have much competition anywhere, and this time it's me who leads in. Like, she can hear Haymitch in her mind, but like, I feel like genuinely, like, there is a part of Katniss that really does want this comfort and this romance with Peter. I do genuinely believe that, but again, it's a confusing situation. I don't know what I fully believe. What I love about this, before we talk about like, the really exciting stuff, what I love about this is that we have mention of like Haymitch's Hunger Games, and Katniss and Peter wonder about it. And now we're going to get to see it, you know, like we're going to get to see it in Sunrise on the Reaping. So I love the fact that that was mentioned in here. How do you think he did it? Who did what? Haymitch, how do you think he won the games? He outsmarted the others, says Peter. And I wonder, do they have like a replay of like games from years and years and years ago? Because they have obviously watched the games from the previous few years because they are made to, but Haymitch has happened long before Katniss and Peter were born. So I wonder if there is maybe like a record, or like obviously it's like all recorded, it's for television. Like, can you like buy the DVD? Can you buy the Blu-ray of the Hunger Games? The one that Haymitch was part of, and like watch the highlights and stuff. Like, I don't know if you can do that in this. I can't remember if it's said. It was mentioned actually earlier in this book as well. I do kind of like the idea that there's like this whole disaster tourism thing where each of the arenas where the games are held, they are then preserved as historic sites, and people can actually book to go to those places and take photos there and get tours and stuff, which is so grim. It is so dark, but it does remind me of like disaster tourism, like where people go, you know, to different countries. They go to where a terrible thing has happened, and it's like that whole appeal of seeing something grim and dark. So I imagine they probably do have a whole DVD box sets of the Hunger Games from all of the previous years. So, you know, those in the capital can watch people who aren't part of the capital die every single time. Again, grim, very grim. But I loved the whole sequence when Katniss had to go to the cornucopia again, and this time try and get some medicine for Peter. And she had to like knock him out with the sleeping syrup, which Haymitch gave. Oh, I love that moment. Even though Peter was like, don't do that again, I was like, she'll probably do it again. And yeah, so when she has her fight with Clove, that was very intense and very exciting. Clove was talking a little bit too much, you know, talking a little bit too much. And then as soon as she mentioned Rue, oh, like, I forgot about this moment in the film as well, but when Thresh comes and he kills Clove, like, he just, like, picks her up like a rag doll. Like, that was so satisfying to me. And the way that Thresh lets Katniss go because Katniss had, you know, shown Rue so much compassion and love. And, oh, like, Thresh, oh, I felt so sad when he died, honestly. We don't get to see it, but we do see his picture in the sky, and that's just so awful. And it's awful as well when Peter says, oh, I hope Cato kills him so we don't have to. Like, that's the tough reality of their situation. If someone else doesn't kill that person who you like, you might have to do it yourself, you know? So, like, it's a really, again, like, awful situation to be in. But yeah, I love the way that Thresh just, like, ragdolled Clove around and is like, did you kill Rue? And she's like, no. It was so good, like, so exciting. And I was scared for Katniss as well, the fact that she went all that way to do that for Peter. Like, she could have easily not done it because she wasn't really that affected by it. I mean, obviously, there is the rule that both of them can, you know, go through and win and be victors if they're both from the same district and they're the last two standing. Of course, there is that. But the fact that Katniss put her life on the line to go to that place where the bloodbath happened, where other people are going to be as well, that is a terrifying thing to do and a very brave thing to do. So if anything, Katniss has just proved time and time again how brave she is, how much she does care about Peter in order to put herself in that kind of situation. She doesn't want to be alone, sure, but like it's still very selfless of her to do that. I also felt so bad for Foxface as well. Like, Foxface was doing so well. We barely got to see her. But yeah, when Peter leaves the, you know, stuff that they'd been foraging just lying around, and then Foxface eats some of the berries that obviously are deadly, and Katniss is like, no, Peter, she's your kill, not Cato's. What? I haven't seen her since the first day. How could I have killed her? In answer, I hold out the berries. Like, the implications of that, like, the way that Suzanne Collins can, like, write a cliffhanger sometimes, it's just so phenomenal, because it really is, like, a mic drop moment. It is a heart-dropping moment. So that was so freaking fantastic. Poor Foxface, but you did try, and she got so far. She was in, like, what, the final 4? Yeah, I think she was 4th. So, like, after Foxface, it really is just Cato, Peter, and I was about to say Jennifer, in Katniss. So another thing I totally forgot was how the final battle kind of went down with the mutations. It's when like they get on top of the cornucopia horn thing. Katniss says, there's something else about them, something that makes the hair rise up on the back of my neck, but I can't put my finger on it. And I literally wrote, oh, I know now, because then it came back to me. Yeah, like it's the eyes of the previous tributes. And like, again, like the implications of that. So the green eyes glaring at me are unlike any dog or wolf or any canine I've seen. They are unmistakably human. The color with the number 1 inlaid with jewels and the whole horrible thing hits me. The blonde hair, the green eyes, the number, it's glimmer. I can't remember, and I don't know if it's ever explained. You don't think those could be their real eyes, Peter asked. Like, did they actually like take parts of the bodies of the dead tributes and mix them with the mutations? Or is it some kind of like synthetic thing? Like, it's so awful to think about them like mutilating the bodies of the tributes in order to do this. But like, that's what's implied. The others, ruined Foxface and all the other tributes. Have they been given any of the real tributes' memories? Have they been programmed to hate our faces, particularly because we have survived and they were so callously murdered? Yeah, like, do they have their memories? Like, are they, like, what? Like, I need more of an explanation there. But at the same time, it's kind of good to have that mystery. Like, maybe they do, but maybe they don't. I don't know. But I like how Cato got Peter, and then it led to Peter and Katniss having to kind of work together in order to bring him down. So Peter writes like the X on his hand, on Cato's hand, and Katniss shoots it, which means that he can drop Peter. But then Cato does drop where the mutts are, the hounds, and they don't kill him, which is probably like the worst death in this entire story, which is both satisfying and not. Because again, like, he is a product of the Capitol, he is a product of this really awful system, but yeah, he's the one who is being the most evil, I guess, out of the tributes in the fact that he was having fun with it all. But the real nightmare is listening to Cato mourning, begging, and finally just whimpering as the mutts work away at him. All I wanted for the suffering to end. It would be an act of mercy at this point. And she does. She sees him and, well, she hears him, he makes a sound. And I think the word he's trying to say is please. Pity, not vengeance, sends my arrow flying into his skull. It's so sad. Like, I'm not sad for Cato dying because he did deserve it in a way. But again, at the same time, none of them really deserved what ended up happening to them because they were all forced into that position. So it's just so awful. Then we won Katniss. Oh, but then the rule change again. Earlier revision has been revoked. Closer examination of the rulebook has disclosed that only one winner may be allowed. Good luck and may the odds be ever in your favour. Like, how infuriating to go back on your word. They never intended to let us both live. Like, oh my gosh, like, could you imagine if they never had the berries? Like, what would they have done? But I really like how the berries came back to help them. They're begging of each other, like, not to, like, kill themselves. But then Peter says, we both know they have to have a victor. In that light bulb in Katniss's brain, she is not just savvy with a bow, she's not just very savvy with, you know, terrain and survival, but she has a brain. The whole thing would blow up in the game maker's face as they'd have failed the Capitol, might possibly even be executed if Peter and I were both to die, or they thought we were. And she's like, okay, let's eat these berries together. Let's go out together. And it's like, stop, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to present the victors of the 74th Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen and Peter Millark. I give you the tributes of District 12. And you would think, oh, that's over. Like, it's all good and well. Like, it's finally over. Like, I could let out the breath I didn't realize I was holding, which was never mentioned in the Hunger Games. So thank you so much, Suzanne Collins, for not using that overdone frickin' line, which I always hate. But she didn't use it. So thank you. Yeah, you think it's over, but then it just feels like there is more. Like, the games just never seem to end. Like, they are now part of it forever. And to see how, like, proud Effie and Haymitch are when... I want to call her Jennifer. Stop doing that. When Katniss reunites with them, they are truly thrilled to see me, and I'm happy to see them too. Cinna is there as well, which is awesome. And there's also a sliver of maybe Cinna rebelling too, when for like watching the highlights, Cinna has dressed Katniss as just a simple girl, a young one. And Katniss says, this is a very calculated look. Nothing Cinna designs is arbitrary. So that was almost a spark of Cinna's own rebellious nature. And this is kind of like what the end of this is, essentially, just to like kind of set us up for, oh, this is not the end. Even though the games are over, it's not the end here. Listen up, you're in trouble. Word is the Capitol's furious about you showing them up in the arena. The one thing they can't stand is being laughed at, and they're the joke of Panem. Panem. I can't get that song out of my head now. And I think of Panem every time. It's Padam. But no, I'm thinking Panem. Your only defense can be you were so madly in love, you weren't responsible for your actions, which again, fucks with their minds. Does Katniss really love Peter? I guess we'll just find out in books 2 and 3. And to make the victors watch the 3 hours of highlights as well, to just sit there and watch all the people who they just watch die again, It's just so awful. Again, like, these people are not like fully people. They have no empathy. It's genuinely disgusting. Oh, we finally have President Snow come again when he has the crown and he splits in two. Gives it a twist and it separates into two halves. He places the first around Peter's brow with a smile. He's still smiling when he settles the second on my head, but his eyes, just centimeters from mine, are as unforgiving as a snake's. I'm the instigator. I'm the one to be punished. Just absolutely chilling. I kind of love the fact that President Snow has so much power, but yet we barely see him and he barely speaks in the first Hunger Games book. Oh, like, that is so chilling to me. That is genuinely so chilling. There's nothing more chilling than a villain who doesn't give you anything to work with. They are still just a mystery. They're a blank slate. You have no idea what is actually going on in their brains. You just know that they're a villain. And we're going to end the Hunger Games section with the fact that Peter's heart does break when he thinks that Katniss was again just like playing with the cameras, which is what she was forced to do. But like, he thought maybe there was some genuine emotion there. So he says, so what you're saying is these last few days, and then I guess back in the arena, that was just some strategy you two worked out. And Katniss is like, no. It was all for the games, Peter says, how you acted. And Katniss does say not all of it, like not all of it was acted. The closer we get to District 12, the more confused I get. I want to tell him that it's not being fair that we were strangers, that I did what it took to stay alive to keep us both alive in the arena. And I can't explain how things are with Gale because I don't know myself. There's just so much internal struggle in this poor girl. She's too young to be having to deal with all of this. One more time for the audience, he says. His voice isn't angry, it's hollow, which is worse. Already the boy with the bread is slipping away from me. I take his hand, holding on tightly, preparing for the cameras and dreading the moment when I will finally have to let go. End of book 1. Oh, what a great way to end it. What a great, fantastic fucking book. Like, this is so good. And honestly, if it wasn't for like that little bit of a slog where it was maybe just like a little bit too realistic and we were focusing too much on nursing Peter back to health and like how not exactly interested in all that I was. It's not a 5-star, but I am going to give the first Hunger Games book a 4.5 star. This is still so incredibly fantastic, but I know for a fact I prefer the second book and I gave that one 5 stars way back in the day as well. And I hope that I give it a 5-star again, but this is as close to perfection as you can get. For a young adult novel that came out in 2008, I think it was. It was a while ago, and it still holds up. It still holds up fantastically, still exciting, still thrilling, still some twists and turns that just like absolutely left me wigless, and I just freaking love it. But I cannot wait to get into Catching Fire now. You would think with this being my favorite book in the series, a book that I would give a perfect 5 out of 5 stars to, that I would think part 1 of this book would be better than part 1 of the Hunger Games. But honestly, like, so far, it's probably like the worst part out of all of them so far. So like, if we split every single book into 3 parts, I do think the first part of this comes bottom so far in like all 3 of the first Hunger Games parts. Because the first part of this is still fantastic. It's still really, really good. I do prefer the start of the Hunger Games over this one though, because with the Hunger Games, like, you get so thrust into the action so quickly. Like, by the end of the first part, we have Primrose's name being drawn out of the reaping, you know? So like, that was like very exciting and very fast paced. This one, it is, but in a totally different way, because we are now seeing the consequences of Katniss's actions. And I still freaking love this so much. It's that slow tension, that slow sinister feeling that Katniss and her family could be obliterated at any moment, the chokehold that the capital has over Katniss in all the districts just gets stronger. And we see as well like how forceful the capital is trying to get these districts to dislike one another, to kind of like hate each other rather than the capital, because forcing Katniss and Peter on this victory tour and to look into the eyes of, you know, the families of the people they killed in the Hunger Games, you would think that they would resent their murderers. And fortunately, I mean, we don't really get to see like a whole lot of like some of the like earlier districts, like 1, 2, 3, 4 and stuff. We mainly see Rue's district, District 11, and like their reaction, which is very inspiring, but also again, like very, very terrifying. Because again, the grip that the capital has on their throats just shows you like they can't do anything. They can't do any uprisings or rebellions without facing dire consequences. And death is just around the corner when they do that. So there are so many things I loved about the first part of this story, especially in chapter 1 with President Snow being in Katniss's house. I'm staring at the snake like eyes of President Snow. Like that is like a great ending of the first chapter, because we didn't really get to see a whole lot of President Snow in the first book. He was definitely alluded to more than he was shown, but you already get a sense in this book that Katniss has done something bad in the eyes of the president, in the eyes of the capital, and now they're sending the big guns. They are sending the biggest gun that they have, which is President Snow. And we have to remember as well that Katniss is just a teenager. She is still so very young. And so this intimidation, I can only imagine what it would do to me. I would be in tears. I don't know what I would do. And it's a great look into like what Katniss has to go through in this first part, where she tries to be brave and she tries to look past herself and not be like selfish in a way. I feel like all of her like thoughts and decisions are very justified in the fact that she is quite young. But when she, you know, asks Peter and Gale to run away with her, like get their families and run, obviously she is only thinking of herself and her family, which again is a very lovely. And we know Katniss is not selfish. She volunteered to be a tribute for Prim, and she did that for her sister, which is like the most selfless thing you can do. She put herself in danger, which proves that Katniss is brave, but there is so much doubt in Katniss's mind at the start of this, especially when the picture is much bigger than she anticipated, especially with the idea of rebellion and, you know, the idea that maybe people will get hurt. And she wants to not have as many people get hurt as possible, which is very admirable, but it does mean that she isn't as selfless, I guess, in the eyes of like, say, Gale. Gale, I don't know how to feel about Gale, I'm not gonna lie. The fact he says I love you to Katniss, I was like, I really just want them to remain friends. I really like their friendship in the first book, but it's just gotten awkward, it's gotten weird. And even like when they're saying that people now think that they are cousins because that's what they said, one more lie the capital has concocted, when they sent reporters to do personal stories during the games, he was too handsome, too male, and not the least bit willing to smile and play nice for the cameras. We do resemble each other though, quite a bit. And I'm like, what is it with white people dating people they look like? You know what I mean? Whenever I used to like scroll on like Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and there would be like those memes of like couples being together and they literally look like they're related. This might get me a lot of hate down below if you are a Gale and Katniss shipper. But I just do not want them to be together, and I do not see the appeal of them being together. I still want them to be platonic friends. So I didn't love Gale at the start of this. I love the fact that Katniss is trying to understand where he's coming from when she concocts this, you know, vision in her head where if the roles were reversed, if Gale was the one who volunteered for his sibling and went into the Hunger Games and had to do this love story in front of so many people and pretend, Katniss would have felt a bit jealous of that. And I totally love the fact that Katniss is totally admitting that she is not a perfect person. She has so many flaws. She can come across as a bit of a hypocrite sometimes, but so can all of the teenage characters in this. Like Peter as well, when Peter is pissed at Haymitch and Katniss for not revealing about President Snow and the capital being furious with her, when he got pissed at them for that, I was like, but remember in the very first Hunger Games book when, you know, you didn't tell Katniss about your plan about confessing your love about her, you know what I mean? It's just like, but Peter does apologize. Like, that's the one thing. Like, Gale spits his dummy out, or pacifier, or whatever you want to call it, and he acts a bit of a brat until he gets his own way. So, like, say when Katniss you know, is like, oh, let's run away together. And Gil's like, yes, I would love to. And then it seems Katniss doesn't reciprocate the kiss. And then he starts to be like, but then Katniss mentions about the uprising in District 8. And he's like, oh, you know, I'm happy again now. And again, like, he doesn't apologize for like messing Katniss around with her feelings and realizing that she is in such a tough position. Like, here we have Katniss, a teenage girl. She is in the eyes of the Capitol. She's worried about her entire family being slaughtered by the president. And you're laying kisses on her, being pissed at her because she has shown love towards Peter. And I'm like, can you please just put yourself in Katniss's shoes? Like, can you imagine the weight of the world that is on her shoulders right now? Like, can you imagine that? And you're trying, like, you know what? It's just, it didn't sit right with me with the whole Gale stuff. I did feel bad for him when he got whipped. Part of me was like, well, maybe that's karma. But at least Katniss, like, apologizes. At least Peter apologizes as well. Like, Peter actually says sorry. Like, whenever he does act a bit of a brat, he always says sorry. And he does realize a lot of times where he's gone wrong. But again, like, even he's in a really bad position too. And oh my God, like, the talk of, like, marriage and stuff, the fact that he's, like, now had to propose and she's had to say yes. Like, it really does feel like they are never going to escape the Hunger Games, the Capitol, anything like that. It feels so awful to be like in either of their shoes. And he was so kind as well to Thresh's and Rose's family in District 11 when he was offering the winners like salary every month and stuff, or like a 1 month salary every year or something like that, which would have set them up for life anyway. He is like such a nice person. And I really do love the relationship between Katniss and Haymitch. It seems like such a reluctant mentor role, like, because that's what it has been. But the fact that Katniss feels safe enough to tell him anything, like, especially about what, like, President Snow told her, like, she feels safe enough to reveal these things that could get her killed. And I really do love that. Bit by bit, we're seeing a little bit more of Haymitch. Again, like, make me so excited for Sunrise on the Reaping. And Haymitch's Hunger Games was, again, mentioned, especially since this is a quarter-quell that is going to be coming up. Like, the 75th Hunger Games is approaching, and Haymitch was part of the 50th, which was, again, like a quarter-quell. Haymitch has never mentioned his personal experience in the arena to me. So there again, we have Suzanne Collins feeding us a little bit of crumbs in terms of like what Haymitch's games entailed, and it just leaves me wanting more. It leaves me wanting more. Nothing to do with like the next Hunger Games has really been mentioned. We did meet Plutarch, who is the new Games Master, and Katniss was talking to him, they were dancing, and he mentioned about them trying to do something special. It's been like set up for years apparently, but with Katniss and Peter doing what they're doing, I feel like they definitely, because I know what's coming up. I know exactly what the twist is going to be. I do feel like after their victory tour and Katniss kind of inciting a sort of rebellious kind of thing in District 11, I think that definitely pushed President Snow and the game makers to do a certain thing. Even though I know like some twists with Plutarch as well, I love the fact that he kind of showed the Mockingjay thing. And even like one of the last things I read in this part was a peacekeeper. Yeah, it ended part 1 with a peacekeeper catching Katniss in the forest bit. The peacekeeper gives her a small white circle of bread, more like a cracker really, but an image is clearly stamped in the center of it. It's my Mockingjay. And slowly we are seeing, because Plutarch also had that on his watch, we are slowly starting to see the Mockingjay as a symbol of rebellion, a symbol. I really actually love the way Katniss explained it. Something about like Mockingjays weren't supposed to exist. I say I only underline, I don't actually tab or anything, so it's kind of hard to see where my notes are. I don't really have notes, I just underline. A Mockingjay is a creature the Capitol never intended to exist. They hadn't anticipated its will to live. And so I feel like having that be the representation of the Mockingjay and Katniss, the girl on fire, the one who's inciting this spark to even form in the first place, is so inspiring. I love a symbol of hope. I love a symbol that represents a huge community of people who want to live and have a will to live. And I love that we are slowly starting to see the Mockingjay come to represent that. And I think Katniss is maybe like a little bit slower to understanding what that really entails when someone shows her that. Because when Plutarch shows her it, she's just like, oh, it must be like a craze in the Capitol or something, or like he's trying to hide that from people because they will want it too, and he wants like to be unique or something. Like I love that we are getting like the slow realization with Katniss that, oh, maybe there are more people on her side than we anticipated. But Katniss is in an impossible position. Who else will I fail to save from the Capitol's vengeance? Who else will be dead if I don't satisfy President Snow? So she's being torn in two here. Like this is one of the reasons why Katniss is like one of the best book protagonists I've ever read personally, because she is so young. She has gone through so much already, and she is trying to think of everyone as much as possible while also criticizing herself and thinking of herself as selfish, which is just like such a huge thing for her that she will have to overcome. But I love that she kind of has this realization in part 1 where she says to Haymitch just outright, I want to start an uprising. And she says as well, Prim, Rue, aren't they the very reason I have to try to fight? Yes, it always comes back to Prim. It always comes back to Rue. A selfish person wouldn't care, you know? So at some point you have to stop running and turn around and face whoever wants you dead. The hard thing is finding the courage to do it. Like, how beautiful is that? How beautiful, like, how could you have a problem with Katniss right now? It's just like, Gale and Peter are being so unfair to her. Like, both of them at times are so unfair to her. Of course I love Gale, but what kind of love does she mean? What do I mean when I say I love Gale? I don't know. I did kiss him last night. It's just like, like, she's still like trying to figure it out herself, even though she's said and stated she doesn't really want a boyfriend. She doesn't really want to think about starting a family. She doesn't really want to bring kids into this world or anything like that. So like there is, again, like a lot of grappling with like romance there. And it's not like one of the reasons why I read the Hunger Games. I don't really read it for the romance, even though I'm sure a lot of people do. I love it for the action, the political stakes of it, following our main character Katniss as she kicks ass. I genuinely love that more than the whole like will they, won't they, when it comes to like the love triangle between Katniss, Gale and Peter. But I am going to say right here and now, I don't really know people's stance on this now. I feel like back in the day when like the movies were coming out and stuff, people had very strong opinions about Katniss and her love triangle and stuff. But Katniss is doing nothing wrong, in my opinion. She's doing nothing wrong. She is in an impossible position and I do not envy her. I mean, I do envy the fact that she had Josh Hutcherson. No, I did envy the movie character because that's Liam Hemsworth and Josh Hutcherson you're in the middle of. I do envy that, although saying that I don't really like Liam Hemsworth all that much anymore. But Josh Hutcherson, I still have a massive soft spot for, even though I really do struggle to say his name. Josh Hutcherson. I feel like I have to stop to continue saying his name, otherwise I get tongue-tied. But I know what my tongue would rather be tied on. So before I end the part 1 section, I did feel so awful for the people of District 11 and the fact that they did Rue's song and they did the thing. I felt so bad for that man who kind of started that and got like shot and killed in front of Katniss, even though she wasn't supposed to say it. Like, again, like, that's one of the reasons why she is stuck in such a hard place, because she's seen firsthand now what will happen when she steps out of line. She is a young girl up against the world right now, okay? Give her some leniency. I'm glad you two had at least a few months of happiness together. I'm not glad, says Peter. I wish we'd wait until the whole thing was done officially. Surely even a brief time is better than no time. Maybe I think that too, Caesar, if it weren't for the baby. Oh my God, punched me in the gut, just like how clever and how dramatic and how delicious it is when Peter does those interviews. Like, he did it in the first book, he's done it in this one. Like, oh, genius, absolute genius. It just, I still felt the shock. I felt the shock, even though, like, I know Katniss isn't pregnant or anything. It's the playing of the emotions of the people of the capital and just, oh, like, everything is just so good. It's so tasty, but also still so very scary. Like, I'm so scared. Like, I know things that happen, but to have the idea that people are rebelling and to have all of these victors now being part of this games and all of them holding hands during the interview, and Cinna having the dress that Katniss wears, the wedding dress that President Snow makes her wear, which I totally forgot about that in the film. I don't even know if that happens in the film, but to have her, you know, spinning around and then it burns up, and now she actually is a Mockingjay. She's a literal Mockingjay. It looks like one. She doesn't like turn into one, obviously, but like the way she looks, it's that symbol, it's that rebellion in, oh, poor Cinna, getting beat up by the peacekeepers just as Katniss is about to be lifted into the games. Oh my God, like, it's so good. I mean, this had a bit more of a slow build than the first book for sure, but it's paying off. Like, it literally pays off. Your patience is rewarded by the chess pieces that are put into place, and then like a domino effect, they just like fall over like one by one, and it's just so good to watch. Well, I say good to watch. It isn't good to watch Cinna die, obviously, but like, it's so heartbreaking. But you know what I mean? It's like Suzanne Collins, like, in terms of plotting and pacing, has been like, I'm gonna, you know, hold my cards a little bit closer to my chest as I'm writing this book, because I feel like in the first book it was just boom, boom, boom non-stop until the third part, where I kind of got a little bit, you know, I mean, obviously, like, not completely. There are things about the third part of the first book that I loved, but I feel like this one comes across as a little bit more calculating. Like, there is like a goal and a reason to kind of slow your horses a little bit until like all of those pieces come into play. It's just brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. And it's reminding me again why I love Catching Fire so much and why it is my favorite book in the series. But you know, at the end of part 1, where I talked about the peacekeepers and one of them shows them the Mockingjay, they aren't actual peacekeepers. They are Twill and Bonnie from District 8. They had escaped, and they tell Katniss about the fact that District 13, whenever the capital shows you footage of District 13, they reuse the same footage, and they have done for a very long time. So why? Like, are they hiding something? Why don't they go there and get new footage? Because you do see the wings of a Mockingjay in the corner, and it's always the same Mockingjay. And yeah, like, it's kind of intriguing and interesting about that. But I had no idea that District 13 was even alluded to potentially still being around like this early on in the book. Like, I remember it being such a twist in the movies that District 13 like still exists. So to have two random people tell Katniss this, I don't think like has as much of an impact as from what I remember from the movie, or if we had have found all of this out at the very end of this book, if it goes the way I remember anyway. Having that seed of doubt planted quite early on in this book is kind of interesting to me. It is also like the first time when Katniss realizes she might be the face of the Hope for Rebellion, and that is like slowly starting to sink in a little bit. So I love that that moment happened. Oh my god. Chapter 12, when we have the reading of the card of what's going to happen during the third quarter quell, we find out that on the 25th anniversary was when every district was made to hold an election and vote on the tributes who would represent it. That would have been awful. Yeah, so like being chosen by your district, like by the people who are around you, maybe family members or your neighbors, is kind of heartbreaking when you think about it, because it's not just a random name being pulled from the reaping. It is actually people choosing you from your own district to go into the Hunger Games. So the 25th Hunger Games sounds absolutely awful. And then the 50th one, which was Haymitch's, was that every district was required to send twice as many tributes. Awful. And then we see President Snow. On the 75th anniversary is a reminder to the rebels that even the strongest among them cannot overcome the power of the capital. The male and female tributes will be reaped from their existing pool of victors. Oh, and then it takes a little moment. It takes a little moment for Katniss to realize what the hell that means. I'm going back into the arena. Yeah. It just, like, I remember that moment the first time I read it as well, just being like, oh my god. But also so thankful as well, because I do think part of the appeal of the Hunger Games series is the fact that we have that concept of the games themselves. So to have Katniss be able to like go back to it in such a really creative and fantastic way, because it would have been too convenient, I guess, if Katniss had been picked for it again, unless it was some kind of twist like this, where President Snow is literally trying to stop anything rebellious from happening, and sending Katniss back into the games is a huge kind of sign that, yeah, the capital are not to be fucked with. So it isn't even a convoluted way of getting Katniss back in there. And Peter as well. And it could have been Haymitch. Could you imagine if Peter's name had been called first, and then Haymitch was like, I volunteer as tribute? Could you imagine if he'd actually done that? Like, how different that could have been. Kind of interested in how that would have went, actually. But I love that we have Katniss and Peter kind of reversing roles in this book. So in the first book, it was Peter and Haymitch trying their best to make sure that Katniss survives. But in this one, we have Katniss begging Haymitch to do all he can to allow Peter to survive. Like, they owe him that. And I kind of love that Katniss had that, like, very, again, like, selfless thing to do with the games and trying to get Peter to win over her. We both owe him that, and he agrees. Seeing the reaction as well from her mother and Prim too. I love that Prim has seemed to have grown up during this time as well. Looking at Prim's face, it's hard to imagine she's the same frail little girl I left behind on Reaping Day 9 months ago. So this past year has definitely aged Prim so much. Even Katniss says, like, Prim has gone through so much as a 12-year-old that most 12-year-olds have themselves. So Prim has gone through so much, and we just haven't really like been privy to seeing that. But we see it in like little moments with Katniss and through Katniss's observations. So I do find, again, like, Prim pretty fascinating, like in a way that we don't get a whole lot of her, but we can still feel like how important she is to the story and to our main character. And of course, it's even worse the fact that we have so many people going back into the games who have won them in the past, but have also like made friends with one another, or like Haymitch kind of knows them as well. And it's just like a mindfuck. It's a huge mindfuck. And there's Peter and Katniss who had only just won them 9 months before. Now they're going to have to go back into it. And obviously, like, so many people love them, and like the wedding is not going to happen anymore. And oh my god, even though Peter just say, oh, we got married, but like in terms of like a District 12 ceremony. So like, we're not officially married, but we are kind of married. That was kind of sweet and kind of quick thinking for Peter as well, especially since, you know, he announces that Katniss is pregnant. So yeah, they probably would have wanted to get married first and then the pregnancy after. Otherwise, they might have been criticized for that maybe. Obviously in like a lot of societies and a lot of cultures, a lot of religions, getting pregnant before marriage is a bad thing. So I guess Peter like covered all his bases. And I love Effie as well so much. Like, you know, Peter and Katniss, like they really do like her and they do appreciate her. And when Effie like talks about like her hair, thank you, I had it especially done to match Katniss's pin. I was thinking we might get you a golden angle band and maybe find Haymitch a gold bracelet or something so we could all look like a team. Like, I don't know, like that's just so sweet. That's so sweet for Effie to say. Like, again, it's like very conflicting because, you know, Effie's from the capital, you know, she's a government employee, essentially. A lot of people from the capital are, but they, again, like, and Katniss thinks this as well, when they all show their mortification about the fact that they are sending past victors in, and they've already like gotten attached to the past victors. They know their stories now. They've grown to like love them. And so now it's like confusing them as well because they're in uproar that, say, for instance, Peter and Katniss are going back in and they've come to know and love them. And Katniss does think, oh, as soon as the bloodshed starts, I'm sure they won't care anymore. But like there is like still a human part to everyone here, and it's something that keeps coming out every now and then. So to see like Effie be a kind of representative of that as being the character closest to our main characters, of someone like from the government, from the capital, it's so touching. Like even Katniss's stylist team, even they like can't stop crying and they're like so nice and lovely. There is a human part to them. And yeah, I like what Haymitch says to Katniss, like, remember who your enemy is when you're in there. Like, the main enemy in all of this is Snow. It is the capital. I mean, there are more enemies to come, absolutely. But yeah, at the minute, and what the districts have been made to do, what all of the innocent people of the districts have been made to do for the past 75 years, there is a target. There is someone majorly to blame there. So, oh, we got me Finnick. On page 230, we got me Finnick. Do you know how much I love Finnick? I love Finnick so much. And I also love Joanna as well. Joanna has been introduced to... Oh, and also this is so sad as well, that with these victors in the now new contestants in the Hunger Games, they can be of any age really. So like you do have old people going in there. You can also have someone who is a mother. So we have Cecilia from District 8 has to detach herself from 3 kids who run up to cling to her. So like now we're not just like sending children into the Hunger Games, we're sending parents into the Hunger Games. And now their children have to watch their parents get murdered on television. You know, it's just... the injustice of it all. It's so awful. Again, like I get so passionate and so angry about it because it's just such an awful thing to do. Okay, so we also learned about Macely Donna, and we learned about her in part 1. Like she was a friend of Katniss's mother, and she was in the same Hunger Games as Haymitch. She obviously didn't survive. What I'm so surprised at is that we actually do get such a thorough rundown of what happens in the 50th Hunger Games that I'm like, oh, okay, this kind of takes away some of the element of surprise from the upcoming book Sunrise on the Reaping, because it's pretty much like told to you, like kind of the rundown of events and like how Haymitch won. So we actually do know how Haymitch wins. Yeah, Peter and Katniss watch it, and you know, they go into the 50th Hunger Games, all of the contestants, all, I think it was like, what, 48 of them? We watch them all come up, and it's the most breathtaking place. There is a green meadow, patches of gorgeous flowers. The beauty disorients many of the players because when the gong sounds, most of them seem like they're trying to wake from a dream. Haymitch gets to the cornucopia first, gets some weapons and a backpack with choice supplies. It'll be so interesting to see if Suzanne Collins still follows this. 18 tributes killed in the bloodbath on the first day, others die off. Becomes clear that everything in this pretty place is deadly poisonous. So there are fluffy golden squirrels that turn out to be carnivorous and attack in packs. Butterfly stings bring agony, if not death. Macely and Haymitch end up forming a pact. Oh, the mountain erupts in a volcano that wipes out dozens of players, including all but 5 of the Korea pack. So like we're getting like spoilers for this brand new book that's coming out. The remaining 13 tributes have no choice but to confine themselves to the woods. Haymitch has remarkable speed and has killed 2 when the 3rd disarms him. That careers about a slit's throat when a dart drops him to the ground. Macely saved him. Haymitch is looking for the end of the arena where he does find like a cliff, so a pebble falls down in the abyss. It bounces back. Macely dies when a flock of candy pink birds who have long thin beaks skewer her through the neck, so now we know how she dies. He holds her hand while she dies, and all I can think of is Rue and how I was too late to save her. Haymitch and a girl from District 1 are the last 2 standing. They have a physical fight. It's bloody and awful. He staggers through the beautiful woods, holding his intestines in, and makes a beeline for the cliff. Just as he reaches the edge, the girl from District 1 throws her axe, flies into the abyss, it bounces back and hits her in the face. And that is how Haymitch wins. And it's kind of the same ending as when like Katniss and Peter won by using the game's rules against them. And it's kind of the same with Haymitch here by kind of showing up the game makers, the capital, the Hunger Games itself by using a force field, like that force field against them in order to win. But I'm just, again, so surprised that we found out so much about the 50th Hunger Games when we have a book about to come out that's hopefully going to go through all of that. But like, if we already know that it's a girl from District 1 and Haymitch are the final two, and we know how Haymitch's friend from District 12 dies, like exactly in like certain aspects of it, like when people die from like a volcano or from squirrels. I don't know now if like some of that excitement for the new book has kind of dissipated a little bit, because like that's kind of all spoilers for the new book, right? Have I just spoiled it for you? I'm so sorry if I did, but like this is all public information. This is in a book that came out in 2009. But maybe Suzanne Collins has something up her sleeve. Maybe we will say different things. Don't know if she's going to follow that to a T or not, but we'll see. I love that Finnick is here. I also feel so weird for Finnick as well, because he won when he was 14, and then people waited for him to turn like 16 before they like threw themselves at him. It makes my skin crawl to think of someone waiting for someone to turn of legal age in order to like do something with. That's so gross. Like really, really gross. Like I feel so bad for Finnick to be exploited in that way in the capital and everything, and to be it's just absolutely violent, disgusting, really. Yeah, because of his youth, they couldn't really touch him for the first year or two, but ever since he turned 16, he'd spent his time at the games being dogged by those desperately in love with him. Like, it just feels so weird. No one retains his favour for long. He can go through 4 or 5 in his annual visit. It doesn't mention if it's like just women that he kind of gets with. He gets people's secrets. Like, that's kind of trade. Like, he trades his body for people's secrets kind of thing. So maybe Finnick is a bi king. Maybe he is a bi king, but I do know he has a one true love. She has been mentioned because he writes a poem for her. So what was her name again? Is it like Annie or something like that? Like, she hasn't been mentioned by name yet. Just that Finnick wrote a poem. And I love Joanna as well. I love the way she talks. Like literally, like when she kind of disrobes in the elevator and stuff. And I'm just like, Queen, honestly, do it. Like no shame. Absolutely no shame. She tells Katniss, wish I got thinner. You look fantastic. And then they talk about what she wore on television. And Joanna says, so gorgeous, I want to reach through the screen and tear it right off your back. Like, she says things that are a little bit catty, but also in a way like very complimentary as well. I just love her. Like, she's so fantastic. Joanna unzips the rest of her tray, letting it drop to the floor, and then kicks away in disgust. Except for her forest green slippers, she doesn't have on a stitch of clothing. That's better. I just love her. She's awesome. Oh my god, when the new Avox was Darius as well from District 12. That was shocking. I totally forgot about that happening. Again, more reminders to Katniss that she will never escape the brutality of the government of the capital of President Snow. Oh, and I forgot how much I love Wiress and Beatty as well. 2 people who invent things that Joanna calls nuts and bolts. I love the fact that Katniss wants to team with them. And Mags as well. Oh, I love Mags. The elderly woman who's also from District 4. She gives me a toothless smile. I remember how she volunteered to replace the young hysterical woman in her district. She did it to save the girl, and I decide I want her on my team. I freaking love Mags so much. This is one of the reasons why I think I love this book more than The Hunger Games, is I connect to so many more characters in this one. And I mean, I do root for characters in the first one, like Rue. I loved Rue. But like, in this one, we have Joanna, we have Finnick, we have Mags, we have Beatty, we have Wiress. We just have so many great new characters that it just like expands so much more, and I just freaking love them. And I just, Wiress and Beatty show Katniss the force field outside where, you know, like the game makers are, and now Katniss can't shoot an arrow at them. But they show her like there's like a sort of a chink in the armor per se, where, you know, she probably could shoot something through that. And I forgot that during her little session where she has to like do that private session with them, when she hangs the training dummy thing by the neck and then writes Seneca Crane on, the gamekeeper from the first Hunger Games book who got killed afterwards because of the fact that Katniss and Peter showed him up and he got punished. The fact that Katniss did that in front of the new game makers, or even I think some of them are still like from years ago, and like Plutarch and stuff. But like, yeah, I freaking love that. It was like such an act of defiance. Again, like very ballsy. She's just fantastic. I love Katniss so much. Peter painted a picture of Rue, which I thought was so sweet. I just wanted to hold them accountable, if only for a moment, for killing that little girl. And then Effie does say, that's all we're thinking, it's forbidden, Peter. But she doesn't really like stop them or anything. Like, she doesn't really give them a token down or anything. And they end up pulling a 12, which is pretty cool. And I will say, the fact that the only time Katniss's and Peter's nightmares don't appear is when they both like sleep, you know, next to each other, and they feel protected by one another. That's a very cute thing. Like, I do really like that. It does show you like how safe they feel with one another, that they stop having nightmares when they're next to each other. Like, that's so beautiful in a way. So again, I am team penis, but at the same time, it's like not what I'm reading this story for. So if you're here for the romance, if you're here for my romance opinions, you're probably just gonna get like little bits and bobs every now and then. Oh, I freaking love it. But yeah, I loved how dramatic it was when Cinna got beat up, and now Katniss is entering the games and she's surrounded by water. I can only form one clear thought. This is no place for a girl on fire. Oh, Like, I only wish that this book was so much longer. Like, I only have like a little bit left. A little bit left. Like, this is taking like so much longer to get into the actual games than the first book did. And obviously, like, there's different reasons for that. But honestly, the only downside of this book is that I wish it was like 100, 200 pages longer. And I haven't even finished yet. But I just know I want more. I want more.
You two are so beautiful and cute. I love you so much.
Oh, I've just finished Catching Fire. Oh, God. I think my cats are fighting. I should have called them Gail and Peter, because they're fighting again. It is my favorite book in the series. It just is. Like, how do you get this entire section here is pretty much all the games. In 150 pages, you cram so much into it. And you know what? It answers the issues that I had with the first book in terms of like, yes, it's incredibly realistic, but it spent a little bit too much time trying to heal someone or like trying to find food, trying to get water. There was a bit that dragged the first book down. You will find none of this in here. I mean, yes, they do have to like tend to some injuries every now and then, but it did not overwhelm the narrative. There was shit to do. There was shit to do. They did not have time to fanny on. Oh, they got straight into it. Straight into it. Oh my God. Literally 20 pages into the game is when Peter hits the force field, gets blown back, and Katniss can't find Harpy. Like, he actually like dies for a minute. That is like 20 pages into the game. 20 pages in. Honestly, while I disagree with the Capitol for making these Hunger Games in the first place, you gotta admit, the final one's going out with a bang. Like, what do you mean? Peter, one of the heartthrobs of the games, one half of the most desired couple in all of Panem, has just died in like the first 20 minutes of the game. It was so, obviously he doesn't stay dead. He doesn't stay dead. Like, this is one of the reasons why I love Finnick so much, is that he does end up saving Peter with a little bit of CPR, but not without a lot of mistrust from Katniss. And she does mistrust a lot of the people, because again, like, nobody tells her anything. Like, I would be a little bit pissed off as well if I was her. They had their reasons, like Haymitch, Plutarch, everyone, because they had the idea of breaking them out of the games anyway on the third day. And there was the whole like revolution, they're going to District 13. Like, so much is advancing the plot in the war in Panem so rapidly that, yeah, if Katniss had been captured by the Capitol and they were like torturing her, they could have gotten information out of her. But that's why she and Peter never got any of the information. But again, I do sympathize with Katniss because she does feel used. And that's all that's, you know, happened to her since she entered the games, really, since she put herself forward over Prim in the Reaping in the first Hunger Games book. Ever since that moment, she has been a pawn, essentially. Into this entire series, a lot of it is Katniss trying to regain her control and get her life back and be in control of her own destiny, really. And every single time she thinks she has a choice, every single time she thinks she is taking a stand, something else has been pulling the strings all along. And I would be so fed up if I was her too. So like her reaction at the end towards like Haymitch, I do not blame her whatsoever when she like scratches his face. Peter isn't even there. The Capitol has Peter and Joanna, and well, this is like, it breaks my heart like knowing what's coming, because when Katniss says goodbye to Peter in this games, when she has to go with Joanna to take the wire so that they can enact their plan, she didn't realize she was saying goodbye to him for a very long time. And just knowing what happens as well, like it's never really quite the same again. So I just got to that moment when she says goodbye to him and she goes off with Joanna, and I think this is like one of the last moments of them kind of existing together before like things really turn to shit, like personally, like in terms of like their own personal health and stuff. And Cecilia, the mother from District 8, the one whose kids were like putting them around her neck and stuff, she does die pretty quickly. She was only ever mentioned, really. Like, we never really got to see her, we never really got to know her, but it was just the fact that she was a mother saying goodbye to her children that just tore me apart. That just shows you like how rich Suzanne Collins has made her world, that we only got like a brief glimpse of this person. And then when you see Cecilia's image in the sky after like the first day, I just felt this pit in my stomach. That was just so unfair, so unjust. Those poor kids had to watch their mother die. Now they don't have, you know, it's just, this is why a revolution needed to happen. This is why things needed to change. I love the games as well. The fact that it's like a clock in each section is like 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and a different like horror happens in each section. So like say the rain, that's actually blood. In the Jabberjays, that screams as well, and we thought it was Prim. We thought it was her screaming, and there was that question, did they actually mimic Prim's actual screaming, or was it like manufactured and that's how they got the scream. But that was a very sinister thought. And there was a moment when I thought, oh gosh, did they? Like, I was kind of almost convinced myself. And you never know, maybe it could still, unless it's like directly mentioned in the third book that genuinely didn't happen. Yeah, they could have manipulated that. But I love how a lot of the pieces were put into place in this one in terms of like Katniss seeing the force field in the games room when you could see like the little square, and then that kind of comes back into being handy. The fact that there is like a lightning strike, and that kind of helps them as well with like the force field at the end and Katniss shooting at the chink in the armor. You know, like that kind of came back as well. Like that was so brilliant too. Honestly, just this entire section was so incredibly fast paced and exciting. The previous two parts had more of a slower undercurrent of tension, whereas this one was just like, okay, here's the blood and gore and violence that the Hunger Games promise, with the added element of character progression and characters that we really do come to know and love. So like Finnick and Joanna, I was like really, I knew they would get out and stuff because I have read the series before, but I was still scared for them because they are still in really awful positions. Oh, but Mags, Katniss says to Finnick as they're running away from the poisonous gas, "It's no use, can you take them both? Go on ahead, I'll catch up." And that's to do with like Finnick trying to carry Peter and Mags. No, he says, "I can't carry them both, my arms aren't working." "I'm sorry, Mags, I can't do it." What happens next is so fast, so senseless, I can't even move to stop it. Mags holds herself up, plants a kiss on Finnick's lips, and then hobbles straight into the fog. Immediately, her body is seized by wild contortions, and she falls to the ground in a horrible dance. And Katniss cannot fathom why Mags would do that, why Finnick wouldn't prioritize Mags over Peter. You know, it's like, I know that Finnick and Mags are on the side of like getting them out of the games themselves. So like there's like this huge revolution that is happening and they're part of it. And this is all part of that and making change in the capital and overthrowing the government and all of that. It's just, I know that now, but like to see Katniss's confusion, like why are these people doing this? Like why are they trying to save Peter? Why are they trying to save me? You know, it's such a slow realization until the end when she has to like literally be told by Plutarch and Haymitch. Oh, poor Virus as well, when she got her throat slit, and she was the one who figured out the whole TikTok thing as well. Like she was pretty awesome, and I really do like BT. But honestly, Joanna is like one of my MVPs. Haymitch said if you were to be Alice, I had to bring them to you. That's what you told him, right? Like Joanna is really putting herself in dangerous positions, probably more so than anyone else, in order to help too. And now she's being taken by the Capitol, and she does know things. I can't 100% remember Joanna's fate in the series. I know it's not a nice ending. I can't quite remember how we get there though. So I'm excited to find out, but also dreading it. Oh, Finnick as well. When Finnick can hear Annie's screams. Annie Cresta, she was a girl Mags volunteered for. She won about 5 years ago. I had no idea that she was the one who Mags volunteered for. So it was almost going to be Finnick and Annie. In poor Annie though, it sounds like she might have lost her mind. Yeah, she's the one who went mad when her district partner got beheaded. Did she get better after, I ask? I mean, her mind. Peter doesn't know. Who has a happy ending here? Like, why can't anyone be happy? Like, why are the people who are being happy the people I don't want to be happy? Why are they the awful people? Why is it the capital people? Why is it President Snow? You know what I mean? Finnick and I, just my heart like just reaches out to them so much. My heart broke for Peter as well when he says no one really needs me, and Katniss says I realize only one person will be damaged beyond repair if Peter dies, me. And then Katniss kisses him. I feel that thing again, the thing I felt only once before in the cave last year when I was trying to get a Haymitch to send us food. I kissed Peter about 1,000 times during those games and after, but there was only one kiss that made me feel something stir deep inside. Only one that made me want more. And now as well, this kiss for Peter, the sensation inside me grows warmer and spreads out from my chest down through my body and my arms and legs to the tips of my being. Instead of satisfying me, the kiss have the opposite effect of making my need greater. I thought I was something of an expert on hunger, but this is an entirely new kind. So I think, yeah, because when Gail kissed her earlier, it didn't really mean anything. It was probably just like heat of the moment and stuff. But this kiss, it feels right. And it has actually had a reaction in Katniss. So I do think, you know, with all of the confusion of, oh, is it real, is it not? I do think we're being pushed into the direction that, yeah, it can be real when Katniss sees Peter being vulnerable and actually being honest, like not for the games, not for the cameras, but actually being honest and speaking from his heart. That's when Katniss also feels something. It's like when someone finally brings their guard down and lets Katniss in fully without lies and deceit, that's when Katniss can actually be with someone and actually feel something with someone. And that's what it felt like in that moment, because Peter didn't mention anything about the baby. And that's when Katniss is like, oh, he's not playing to the cameras right now. He genuinely means what he's saying. So I kind of love that. Again, I would rather like Katniss just like be her own badass. There's also like some kind of asexual vibes I'm getting from her, but I don't know. Like, again, like it's confusing, all the romance stuff. And I think it's supposed to be. I think Suzanne Collins has set it up so that you can maybe interpret anything with Katniss and with Peter and with Gale. I think she's left it a little bit open-ended that way. So this is the last time Katniss sees Peter before all hell breaks loose. I take Peter's face in my hands. Don't worry, I'll see you at midnight. I give him a kiss, and before he can object any further, I let go and turn to Joanna. Ready? Like, we don't realize the importance of that exact moment right now, because we don't know what's going to happen with Peter and Katniss right then. We don't know that they're going to be separated. This is one of the final moments before all of the capital stuff happens with Peter. But yeah, it does look like Joanna's kind of turned on Katniss, but she did just like take the tracker out of her arm, which is amazing. I hope Katniss gives Joanna her flowers, because Joanna's actually done way more than we give her credit for. Honestly, just saying like how quickly these games happen, it's incredible. You just remember who the enemy is, Haymitch says, that's all. She remembers that. My boat tilts up to the wavering square, the floor, the, what did he call it that day? The chink in the armor. I let the arrow fly, see it hit its mark and vanish, pulling the thread of gold behind it. Now the dawn bursts into a dazzling blue light. Right before the explosions begin, I find a star. It's so good. Like I said before, I probably could have done with like 100 more pages of the games. However, it probably would have turned into a survival thing, and we probably would have just gotten a lot of pages just dedicated to finding food and healing injuries in all of these stuff that I don't find as interesting. So I think it was like the perfect length, really. But yeah, how can you leave the story like this with all this information that Katniss is getting? My brain would explode. She says she was used without consent, without knowledge. At least in the Hunger Games, I knew I was being played with. We had to save you because you're the Mockingjay, Katniss, says Plutarch. While you live, the revolution lives. Whereas Peter I hesitate him, who was picked up by the capital along with Joanna, says Haymitch. And yeah, she attacks him. Oh, Finnick, when he says about Annie, I wish she was dead, he says. I wish they were all dead and we were too. It would be best. Imagine in life getting beaten down and seeing your family and friends getting beat down so much that something like this would be a mercy. Something like this would actually be a positive to them, because then they wouldn't be suffering. Finnick wouldn't be suffering. I wish she was dead. I wish they were all dead and we were too. It would be best. It's just like, oh, like their spirits have been broken. But the final bomb of the story, when Gale is there and says, oh yeah, don't worry, Prim and your mum are safe. After the games, he sent in planes, dropped fire bombs. Well, you know what happened to the Hob. Then on District 12, I repeat, Katniss, Gale says softly. Don't, I whisper. But Gale does not want to keep secrets from me. Katniss, there is no District 12. The way that these characters just drop these twists on us, it's just the most inopportune times. Like, what do you mean that's the cliffhanger of Catching Fire? There is no District 12. It's been obliterated like District 13. But at least we know that District 13 is an actual place. And, you know, that wasn't a fantasy. They actually are there. And they were doing, like, nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So it does bring about hope for that. But the fact that District 12 is obliterated, that is, like, a really awful way to end it. Because what do you mean? Like, Katniss's home is just gone? So many people must have died. So many innocent people must have died. So many people that Katniss knew probably died. Ugh, I actually don't even remember what happened with Madge. You know, the mayor's daughter who actually gave Katniss the Mockingjay pin. I don't know if she's still alive. I hope so. Because she asked about Prim and Gale says she's alive, so is your mother. I got them out in time. Okay, so Gale got them out in time, but what about everyone else? Oh my god. There's so many people I liked in District 12. That's so sad. Anyway, 5 stars. 5 stars for Catching Fire, because it really was just amazing all the way through. There wasn't a dull moment. Even though I said like the first 2 parts are a little bit slower going compared to the first Hunger Games, there wasn't a single boring moment in this. It developed the plot, the revolution has come along nicely, the games were exciting, the new characters were awesome, I love them so much. It's just a perfect entry in the series. Perfect entry. It's peak. This is peak. Hunger Games! Can you believe I'm on the third Hunger Games book already? This marks the end of an era. I know there are prequel books in the series, 100%. Like, oh boy, don't I know it. I'm so excited for the next one to come out. But Mockingjay is like the end of the Katniss trilogy, I guess, is how I would say. And honestly, it just, I already love it so much. So I was doing a 24-hour readathon yesterday where I stayed up for 24 hours. Well, technically I stayed up for like 40 hours. But I was reading from midnight to midnight and I ended up reading part 1 during that. I will link my 24-hour reading vlog down in the description box if you want to check it out. But I did end up reading the first 157 pages, part 1, which is called The Ashes. Oh my gosh, this is not a young adult book. Like, how could it be a young adult book? It is so grim. It is so grim. We open up this book with Katniss walking through District 12 and it's been bombed and everything. Like, there's nothing left. There's nothing left. Even Katniss is walking along. There's like a road of bodies. Oh my god, like, that's so traumatizing. And then she doesn't really want to breathe in because she doesn't know if she's going to breathe in just like regular smoke or if she's going to breathe in a person. Like, how messed up is that? This is no longer a young adult series anymore. Like, this is genuine, like, tackling really tough topics. It confronts death so head on. And it doesn't shy away from showing those gnarly things. Seeing those bodies on the road, like, those are the people that we've come to know and love over the previous 2 books. You know, that's where Katniss grew up. They're her neighbours. And we don't even know what happened to Madge. I mean, like, is Madge okay? Like, I still don't know by the end of part 1. We do know that the 2 District 8 escapees who mentioned District 13 and were looking for District 13, they must have died on the way to District 13, which is so sad. Peter's entire family didn't make it. Oh god, poor Peter. Like, seriously, Peter's got the short end of the stick here. Oh, the stuff that they're doing to him. At first, it seemed like, oh, they're not doing anything, you know, when he's like first broadcast. And Katniss is like, oh, he's actually like remarkably okay. Then he's marked a traitor because he's trying to protect Katniss. And he's calling for a ceasefire, which honestly, like, after everything that's happening, like, in the world today, I mean, which has been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years, of course, but like, this is even more like heartbreaking to read, especially with like all the talks of like ceasefires and stuff, considering, you know, like what's happening to Palestine. Honestly, free Palestine, 100%. And whenever someone says, oh, books aren't political, you turn to the Hunger Games series, okay? You turn to this because, oh my gosh, like, this is nothing but politics at the minute. It's nothing but like warfare now. Like, this feels like a military operation now. This is war. This is genuine war, which is what inspired this series in general, right? It was when Suzanne Collins was channel surfing and she saw that on one channel, it was, you know, young people fighting in the Afghanistan war. And then the next channel, it's young people falling in love on a reality TV show. So this is like the blend of the two, but like, it's so political. Like, you can't read this without feeling like it is saying something about government, about like how senseless a lot of it is, like a lot of the tragedies that come from it is. Peter really does highlight the fact that there are so many innocent people who are going to die during all of this. And by the end of it, there's going to be nothing left. There's going to be no one left. Oh, actually, I think it might have been what Katniss says. You know, when she goes to the hospital and she films the stuff to use as like propaganda against the Capitol. Okay, I can't really find like what, I'm sure someone said it was either Katniss or Peter saying like, by the end of this, like, who was going to be left? Like, we're going to be killing each other. There's going to be no one left, nothing to protect, no one to protect. But I honestly love when Katniss is, you know, shouting back to President Snow after he's killed all those people in the hospital. President Snow says he's sending us a message. Well, I have one for him. You can torture us and bomb us and burn our districts to the ground, but do you see that? One of the cameras follows us upon one of the planes on the building of the roof of the warehouse across from us. The capital seal on a wing glows clearly through the flames. Fire is catching, I am shouting now, determined that he will not miss a word. And if we burn, you burn with us. Which I guess is like the point I was trying to make. If they're going to pretty much kill everyone in the districts, then who's going to be left? And if you kill everyone in the districts, then who's going to clean your toilet, President Snow? In the sense that, you know what I mean? President Snow needs them. And that's kind of the theme that I'm really loving exploring, is like the reliance on the people who are getting stood on by the people in power, by the people in the capital, and all of that. It's just so interesting. Like, this has moved like way beyond the initial premise of, you know, like kids getting sent into the Hunger Games and having to fight each other to the death. This is like dismantling pretty much everything around that. And it's, oh, like, why is this series like literally the best young adult series that was ever written? Ever written, in my humble opinion. And you can argue with the wall, I don't care. Oh, I'm showing random stuff now because my thoughts are all over the place. But you know, Posey Gale's 5-year-old sister, when, you know, they're in District 13, and Octavia's there, you know, one of Katniss's prep team, and like, well, Katniss's whole prep team is there. That was a whole thing. Them being like pretty much like kidnapped and kept in that little place bit and almost tortured and stuff. Like, that was awful. But Posey asks, "You're green, are you sick?" It's a fashion thing, Posey, like wearing lipstick. I say, It's meant to be pretty, whispers Octavia, and she's like looking emotional. Posey considers this and says matter-of-factly, I think you'd be pretty in any colour. Oh my god, like that is so cute. Oh, that is so lovely. Oh my gosh, like how darling. Like I wish we saw more Posey. Like this is the very first time we've ever seen Posey. Gail's 5-year-old sister. And this is like the first time we've seen her. Oh, I freaking love it. Yeah, I've literally just bounced around there, haven't I? Okay, so we met Alma Coyne, President Coyne. Come on, you know exactly what I think of her. You know exactly what I think of her. I love the fact that, oh god, what's her name again? Julianne Moore. I love the fact that Julianne Moore played her in the film because she did a fantastic job. But I do not like Alma Coyne in this book. Like, even from the beginning, I just don't think you can trust anyone with that much power. Like, President Coyne has so much power. She's still so mysterious and so alluring. And I do like that. Like, she does make for a fascinating character, but not a character I like. Should I tell you who I do love? And again, like, my heart breaks for him, though, is Finnick. Finnick. Even when he is conscious, you have to say everything to him 3 times to get through to his brain. The doctor says it's from the electrical shock he received in the arena, but I know it's a lot more complicated than that. He's trying so hard to see what's happening in the capital to Annie. His love for Annie, like he needs to save Annie. He loves her, he wants her back, and it's just made Finnick this like the shell of a person, essentially. Katniss, they won't let me go. I told them I'm fine, but they won't even let me ride in the hovercraft. I taken Finnick his bare legs showing between his hospital gown and slippers. Like, he's just so broken. What else? What else? Oh, I love the fact that Sinner is still kind of keeping tabs on Katniss, even though he's long dead. He is confirmed dead, but the outfits and the stuff that he's doing still for her, like leaving to like Plutarch, the plans and stuff, is so brilliant. It's like he's watching over her even long after death. How is it like so many characters in the series have so many layers to them? Loved the entire hospital segment. Loved the fact that Katniss and Gale were like working together and they had to defy Plutarch in order to, you know, save some people. I mean, the hospital was a lost cause. They still kicked ass together. And I do really like the Katniss and Gale friendship. Katniss does kiss Gale in this book. Let's bring that up, actually. And again, like, she doesn't really kiss him because it's romantic or anything, but she did it when he was hurting. She did it when he's in pain. Yeah, I can't find it. Oh, I found it. So yeah, they're talking, and she says, like, she notices tears in Gale's eyes. To keep them from spilling over, I reach forward and press my lips against his. We taste of heat, ashes, and misery. It's a surprising flavour for such a gentle kiss. He pulls away first and gives me a wry smile. I knew you'd kiss me. How? Because I'm in pain. That's the only way I get your attention. He picks up the box. Don't worry, Katniss, it'll pass. He leaves before I can answer. So, like, it's so weird between them, obviously. I wish he and Katniss never kissed him, because I do genuinely want them to stay platonic friends. But I can kind of understand why she would do that. And with him saying she does that when he's in pain, and it's kind of an affectionate response from Katniss. I don't know if I'm reaching here. I do not know if I'm reaching here. But that's kind of what I'm getting from that whole scenario. Because again, like, I just don't feel anything romantic between them. And I don't know if that's unpopular or not, but I don't feel it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna need Katniss to push Gale away like Miley pushed Liam away when he told her to calm down. And this just reminds me like how much I miss Effie. Like, I need Effie back in my life. Because when Gale and Katniss do the may the odds be ever in your favour little bit that they usually do, it just suddenly reminded me that I need Effie. Didn't they, in the movies, have Effie be taken to District 13? And so we got more of like Elizabeth Banks as Effie? Because it would have been awful to not get her at all in Mockingjay, the films. So I'm really glad they changed that. But we cannot call a close on the part 1 discussion, which there's like so much more to say, obviously. But we cannot call a close on the part 1 discussion without singing, are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange thing could happen here, no stranger could it be. If we left at midnight in the hanging tree, are you? What an absolute tune. Actually, we will end the part 1 little discussion on a bit more of a bum note. In the actual cliffhanger of part 1, Peter, being interviewed again by Caesar, looks so haggard, so different. He's obviously shaking. He's obviously being tortured. The poor man. Katniss, how do you think this will end? What will be left? No one is safe, not in the capital, not in the districts, and you, in 13, dead by morning. And obviously that was a signal. That was Peter saying, get the hell out of there. The capital are coming. They're coming to fight. They're coming to drop bombs on you. So get the hell out. And then the camera gets knocked over, a couple of boots. The impact of the blow that's inseparable from Peter's cry of pain and his blood as it splatters the tiles. Dun dun dun. So that was his obvious way of getting a message to say, the capital are coming. Yeah, it was a great part, a lot more politically heavy now that Katniss is stepping into the role of the Mockingjay, and she's actually, you know, showing the people that they can make a stand, they can fight back. It's not impossible. They just have to be brave, and they have the entire District 13 behind them. They have Katniss behind them, and you can see as well when she goes to the hospital, the hope that people have when they see her and they say her name, Katniss, which is a stupid fucking name, really. Like, inspirational nonetheless. Let me just say, you're not very big, are you? Or particularly pretty. Peter, you little bitch. You little bitch. Okay, so finish part 2 of Mockingjay. This one was called The Assault. This part really does emphasize the idea of, again, like who the enemy is, like who are we fighting? Are we fighting each other when really the main bad guys are the ones in the capital and they're just still getting us to do their dirty work for them? And there's still like a lot of fighting going on. There's still like a lot of military stuff going on. I remember why like this isn't like my favorite Hunger Games book, and that is because it is like extremely dense in terms of like the war strategy aspect of it, the training for like getting to the capital and the war and stuff. So like it isn't really my favorite thing to read about, but I do really appreciate Suzanne Collins and how she tackles that subject in all of the things around that. Like I do love the characters still. I think the characters are still amazing. Finnick and Joanna, absolute MVPs in this one. Also Deli as well, because when they rescue Peter and he comes to District 13 and you think, oh, this is like the happy ending, like we finally get Peter back, everything's right with the world. No, Peter will never be the same again. And this is the harsh reality of war. And it's something that I kind of love that's also explored in this, is that when Katniss is like, Peter's changed, Joanna's like, well, everyone's changed, you know? You've changed, I've changed. We have all changed, like, especially from the games too. But I tell you who hasn't really changed all that much is Gale. Gale actually, like, kind of scares me a little bit sometimes. So it's his idea, you know, like, in District 2, to do, like, the avalanche thing and, like, trap the people of District 2 in the nut. And he's thinking of all these death traps and stuff, and Katniss says, back in the old days when we were nothing more than a couple of kids hunting outside of 12, Gale said things like this and worse, but then they were just words. Here, put into practice, they become deeds that can never be reversed. And Gale has like the kind of kill or be killed mindset, which honestly, like, I don't blame him too much for, considering the oppression that District 12 had for so many years and all the deaths and everything as well. But it's still a scary thing for Gale to be like so dry with like, oh, there might be people who are innocent, but we need to sacrifice the few to save the many. There is definitely like an argument to be had for like both sides and stuff, but Gale does still scare me a bit. He really does. Because he seems to be the only person who was kind of not really changed all that much. We're learning more about him, absolutely, because we don't really get to see a whole lot of him in Hunger Games 1 and 2. But in this one we do. But then Katniss says something like, oh, he used to say things like this all the time back in the day. So like, I really just feel like now Gale is in his element. And I honestly do rebuke Gale and Katniss together. Gayness, as you will, Team Gayness. I rebuke the gayness. I saw Peter yesterday through the glass. What do you think? I thought I'll never compete with that, no matter how much pain I'm in. I don't stand a chance if he doesn't get better. You'll never be able to let him go. You'll always feel wrong about being with me. I mean, one, very assumptive that Katniss will be with you. Just because Peter isn't there, what makes you think that she'll be with you, huh? And then, yeah, Katniss does end up kissing him, which again, like, could be a very conflicting message, considering she's always like, I don't really want a boyfriend. I don't really want to be in a relationship. I don't want this. I don't want that. But in the fading light, I shut my eyes and kiss Gale to make up for all the kisses I've withheld. And because it doesn't matter anymore, and because I'm so desperately lonely, I can't stand it. He leans in and presses his lips to mine briefly. He examines my face closely. What's going on in your head? I don't know, I whisper back. This is more sad than it is romantic. Like, anything between Katniss and Gale is just sad at this point, in my opinion. Like, it just feels like a desperate attempt at human connection. A human connection that she did get with Peter. And it's something that made her feel safe. And now that Peter is the way he is, now, oh my God, like when he started strangling Katniss, I forgot about the fact that he was hijacked. I genuinely forgot about that from my first read of this and the movies. Forgot all about it. So when he starts to like strangle her, I'm like, it's brilliant for one. Oh, Stray Kitty is back. It's a brilliant strategy from President Snow in the Capitol. Like, what does Katniss want more than anything in this, like right now, is to save Peter. She's always like, oh, I'll only be the Mockingjay if like Peter gets pardoned, if Peter does this, Peter does that, you know what I mean? So like Katniss is still very much involved with Peter and wants him to be safe and alive. But President Snow has kind of ruined that. And by sending Peter as like a sort of weapon when they were like rescuing him is a genius move. Like, I have to give President Snow props for that. And it's such a huge juxtaposition between the reunion of Katniss and Peter and the reunion between Finnick and Annie. So when Annie sees Finnick, she shouts Finnick, and suddenly it's as if there's no one in the world but these two crashing through space to reach each other. I honestly do love Finnick and Annie being back together, and the fact that they get married as well is so cute. Even though I know what's coming and it's devastating, it's still nice to see like happiness during a time of darkness. Like, there is a light in the dark, and they are 100% radiating that. And they deserve it. They deserve each other. You deserve each other, don't we, Bach? You know what I mean? Like, they deserve each other. And in terms of Peter, when Katniss says, I'm disappointed that mine was not the first face he saw when he walked. Honestly, the hope and happiness that I had that they were back together, it was crushed. My lips are just forming his name and his fingers lock around my throat. Oh, and then, yeah, he's being hijacked just enough to infuse memories with fear and doubt, taking his memories of Katniss and distorted them so they're scary. So scary that he'd see her as life-threatening, that he might try to kill her. Yes, that's our current theory. Katniss says, it is impossible for someone to make Peter forget he loves me. No one could do that. And I'm like, yeah, I honestly, and even Prim is so wise in this. Like, she's become more wise the more books have gone on. Yeah, she says, Katniss, I know this whole thing with Peter is terrible for you, but remember, there's a chance that the old Peter, the one who loves you, is still inside, trying to get back to you. Don't give up on him. Oh, and when Prim as well, like, she's training to be a nurse, and Katniss is talking about like, oh, this is a future of Prim's that I never expected, and it's only made possible now because we are rebelling, and like, she's in District 13, she's safe. She never would have had this opportunity in District 12, and like, she sees the positive sides of this rebellion and standing up against the Capitol. She sees a future for her little sister, and I'm like, do we have to twist the knife in? Do we have to twist it and pull? And yeah, Prim does have an amazing future ahead of her. As a nurse, like, she could save so many lives, so many countless lives. We'll get to it when we get to it. I'm actually surprised it hasn't happened yet. I'm actually so surprised. I'm in part 3 now. There's just around about like 150 pages left. So surprised it hasn't happened yet. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh my God. Okay. I need to go back to talking about Finnick and Joanna, because I do think they just absolutely shone in this section. Finnick first. Oh, my heart broke for him. My heart broke. You know, when they're doing the filming of the TV spots with Katniss and Finnick, and he mentions about his time being like the golden boy of the Capitol. This is so hard to say out loud because it's just like so personal and it's just so heartbreaking. President Snow used to sell me my body, that is. I wasn't the only one. If a victor is considered desirable, the president gives them as a reward or allows people to buy them for an exorbitant amount of money. If you refuse, he kills someone you love, so you do it. And like, it just completely changes your mindset of Finnick in a way. Like, I always loved him, absolutely, but he goes from like this kind of fuckboy image that even Katniss had of him to begin with. When she first meets him, she thinks, oh, he's just trying to get into my pants and stuff like that. But no, like, we find out like he was actually getting secrets, which we knew. We knew he was like, instead of getting money, he would get secrets and stuff. But like, to find the context behind it and the real reason why he was doing it is just absolutely devastating. And again, like, Suzanne Collins actually put this in a young adult novel. She put this in a book where we have people rising up against our oppressors, against the government, and people who are, you know, taking advantage of the people who they're supposed to protect and who they're supposed to look after. And it's so relevant. It is so prominent in today's society. And before that as well, Katniss does say the capital's fragile because it depends on the districts for everything. If we declare our freedom, the capital collapses. President Snow, thanks to you, I'm officially declaring mine today. So yeah, we absolutely do have this system in place where the people who are at the bottom are realizing their worth and they're rising, they're coming up. So Finnick is telling all of these secrets online. He's like, and now onto our good President Coriolanus Snow. I think this is the first time I've heard his actual name. Like, I do remember being in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I did have a reading vlog for it that I don't have public anymore. But now all I can say is President Cunnilingus Snow. That's all I can picture now. That is his official given name on his birth certificate, is President Cunnilingus Snow. And I will not hear otherwise. So yeah, he was doing like poison, like that's how he's kind of risen in the ranks. He was poisoning people. And the fact that he's like drinking from the poison cup as well to deflect suspicion, but antidotes don't always work. They say that's why he wears the roses that reek of perfume. They say it's to cover the scent of blood from the mouth sores that will never heal. So his mouth is like always bleeding, essentially. And you know, Katniss picked up on that the very first time she ever like had him breathe in her face. She could smell blood. It isn't just the image of, oh, this guy is bad, he's got like blood in his hands. It's not a metaphor. He is literally bleeding blood inside of his mouth. And this is the price that he's paid to get to where he is now. And it's just so awful to think of like what he has done to get where he is. The blood that he spilled. Honestly, don't get into politics. Oh, and then we find out after this as well, Katniss asks Haymitch, is this what happened to you? And Haymitch says, no, my mother and younger brother, my girl, they were all dead 2 weeks after I was crowned victor. Because of that stunt I pulled with a force field, Snow had no one to use against me. Oh, and I imagine with Sunrise on the Reaping coming as well, we're going to see this. We're going to find out more about it. We're going to see Haymitch's family. And this is just like an awful, awful revelation. But Finnick, you have my heart. You have my heart, mind, soul, body, everything. And you do really say like the PTSD from it, like from Joanna, from Finnick, from even Katniss. They have PTSD from all of this. And it's like the real reality of war as well, is like people who come out of this don't come out of it the same. It's devastating. You can't unsee what you witnessed during all of this. Joanna, I freaking love the connection she ends up having with Katniss. So like she's now rescued as well, and thank God, like I'm so glad she's alive. But then sometimes you think, would it be better if they were dead? Because they are suffering now. You say Joanna, like even in the rain, when it's raining, she has like this visceral reaction because in the capital, they were like doing like electroshock stuff on her as well as like with water. And I can imagine the Rain and Blood from the second book as well also did a number on her. So like you can see how affected she is, and she's using like the morphine and stuff. She's almost like a drug addict now. And still she really wants to get to the capital. She wants to fight. And her and Katniss, they both want to. But like Kindness like, no, we can't. But then they have to like train for 3 weeks and like catch up on all of the training that everyone else has been doing. And they try, they really do try. And the way that their friendship actually develops through all of that, like they've never really been like friends, but like they have an understanding with one another and they do root for one another. And to say like how they support one another during like the training, like, come on, we have to do this and stuff. It's so beautiful. I freaking love, because we don't really get a whole lot of like female friendships in the Hunger Games series. We do have Katniss with Rue, we have Katniss with Prim, but both of those were like Katniss had fulfilled like a big sister role with them. It was more like a protection thing, a care thing. But when it comes to Katniss and Joanna, it feels more like a complex friendship. And I just love to say that. I love saying it so much. Oh, and Joanna as well, like she's always in the hospital too, and she doesn't really have a room to herself. And then Katniss, she says she won't be alone. I'm going to room with her. The fact that she offers that, like she offers Joanna to like bunk with her and stuff, it's just so touching. And this is when Joanna says about Peter and people changing. So Joanna says Haymitch says he's getting better, and Katniss says maybe, but he's changed. And then Joanna says, so have you, so have I, and Finnick and Haymitch and Beatty. Don't get me started on Annie. The arena messes all up pretty good, don't you think? Or do you still feel like the girl who volunteered for your sister? She is just highlighting right there the fact that from the very first book to now, every single character has changed. Not exactly for the best at times, but they've changed. Everyone's changed. Peter has unfortunately gone through this awful, torturous session in the capital. He is broken as well. Everyone is broken. Everyone is broken. Everyone's changed. I love the fact that Joanna offered such wisdom. There's so many people are wise. And when Joanna as well is rooting for both of them, you can do it. We both can. We're victors, remember. We're the ones who can survive anything they throw at us. I love Joanna. I love her so much. And I love her with Katniss so much. Throw Peter out. Throw Gale out. I am team Kahana. Kohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. Or would it be Joannis? I mean, to be fair, at least both of those ship names aren't as ridiculous as like penis and gayness. You know what I mean? So yeah, heartbreaking to see Peter the way he is. Heartbreaking that Joanna doesn't actually go to the capital or anything because, yeah, too triggered. The PTSD is just a little bit too much for her. But she does get Katniss to promise that she will kill Snow. And she promises on her life, on her family's life, that Katniss will kill Snow. There's still like a huge emphasis on television and showing things on TV. So when they do the whole siege of District 2 and they ruin like the nut and stuff, they have to make sure that they film everything. They understand the power of words. Like that's something that Suzanne Collins has not forgotten either. Even though we don't have the Hunger Games happening in this book, there is still an element of reality television. There is still an element of having to perform for a camera and not being like 100% authentic sometimes, just so that you can get like a message across. It still feels like a huge critique that Suzanne Collins has on television, present yourself on television, how real it is, how unreal it is, and like the side of things that people show you. you sometimes isn't authentic. It's been decided that you are of most value on television. It's because she understands the power of that screen. So yeah, the fact that Gale and Katniss are like best friends or whatever, the fact that they have such conflicting opinions when it comes to the war is so fascinating, because you would think with them both having been raised in the same district, they would have the same ideals, the same morals. But then, yeah, like when Katniss is talking to the guy who escapes the nut, it's so weird to say that. And he's come out of the train and he's like pointing the gun at Katniss's head. And he is like, give me one reason why I shouldn't shoot. And she says, I can't. I can't give you a reason. That's the problem, isn't it? We blew up your mine, you burned my district to the ground. We've got every reason to kill each other. So do it. Make the capital happy. I'm done killing their slaves for them. I'm not their slave, the man mutters. I am, I say. That's why I killed Cato, and he killed Thresh, and he killed Clove, and she tried to kill me. It just goes around and round. And who wins? Not us, not the district, always the capital, but I'm tired of being a piece in their games. Something that Peter said ages ago. Peter was on it, you know, like Peter was ahead of his time. When I saw that mountain fall tonight, I thought they've done it again. Got me to kill you, the people in the districts. I come from a mining town. Since when do miners condemn other miners to that kind of death and then stand by to kill whoever manages to crawl from the rubble? These people are not your enemy. The rebels are not your enemy. We all have one enemy, and it's the capital. Please join us. And then she gets shot. Like, very, very important and impactful message. But it's actually like the follow-up when she's talking to Gale, and Gale is like justifying his actions. Katniss says, but that kind of thinking, you could turn it into an argument for killing anyone at any time. You could justify sending kids into the Hunger Games to prevent the districts from getting out of line. So Gale is towing a very dangerous line there, where he is almost like kind of speaking a little bit like President Snow, like, oh yeah, like this is just for like the greater good. Like those people could rise up against us in the future. They could kill us and slaughter us and burn our districts to the ground in the future. They could do that. So they could prevent them from doing that by killing them first. And as kind of says, that kind of thinking is kind of justification for the Hunger Games. The districts rose up against the capital years ago, 75 years ago, 76 years ago, however long it's been. And the capital responded by putting them back in line by having them do the Hunger Games. You know, like what is to stop Gale from becoming the next President Snow? You know, like isn't that such an interesting concept? Like this is why like the Hunger Games series is like, it doesn't even feel like a series where they just send kids into an arena and battle to the death. It's way more than that. It's so politically driven. It is so war driven. And oh my gosh, like the actual layers of this series itself is too powerful. It's too good. And even Finnick jokes, let the 76th Hunger Games begin. Because that's exactly what it's feeling like. Does anyone really escape it? If you're just doing what the capital is doing to the other people, are you actually escaping the capital? Are you actually escaping President Snow? Or are you still playing the games? Oh my god. So yeah, part 2 ended with Peter joining their ranks. And I'm like, okay, Peter's been a bit of a bitch. He actually absolutely has. Like, you don't say Katniss isn't pretty, you bastard. But I am rooting for him to restore his memories of Katniss and to bring that love back, because even I miss it at this point. I feel lonely now. I'm feeling what Katniss is feeling in its devastation that she's lost the boy with the bread. And I don't mean bread as in like the booty. I mean like the bread that, you know, he actually gave her. Anyway, this is just feeling very bleak in the minute. And I think that's like another reason why like Mockingjay isn't like my favorite book in the series either. It's still catching fire 100%. But like there's a lot of bleakness. There's a lot of horror. There's a lot of terror. It's very realistic. Again, like I think the Hunger Games series has been fantastic for its realism, at least in the context of it being like a dystopian futuristic novel. It feels realistic. And honestly, it just feels like I'm on a train right now and we're about to pass a bridge that has been blown to bits, and I know I'm about to head into the water and it's going to be a massive explosion and I'm going to die in the process. But yeah, I'm still on the train and I'm still not getting off. It just felt like I had completed the Hunger Games myself, reading this book, finishing this trilogy, the original trilogy, by the way. It does feel like I've just ran from District 13 all the way to the capital myself and didn't stop once. I love this book. I really, really do. I think it's fantastic. Everything that Suzanne Collins tackles, she tackles well. And she does it so brilliantly in this. Even when we think we have a savior in President Coin, no. People who want power are usually the people who shouldn't have power. The cycle of abuse, the cycle of having someone in power who just uses and abuses the people beneath them, it's so sickening. I love when Katniss shot Coin instead of President Snow, even though, I mean, she did promise that she would kill Snow. However, Katniss didn't do that. I think she realized, like, Snow's dead anyway. I can use this arrow to stop what Snow represents, that Coin is embodying right now. She is going to perpetuate the cycle. I mean, she was talking about holding another Hunger Games, but putting the Capitol's children in there. Like, how awful is that? Like, again, it misses the entire point of this entire series where these children were unfairly paying for the crimes of people from 75 years ago to then make the Capitol's children, the innocent children, pay for the crimes of their elders. When does it stop? When does it end? So that's what I think is so brilliant about Mockingjay and the ending of Mockingjay as well. When it comes to like President, I'm still very conflicted. I remember being so conflicted about this as well when I first read this book in like Katniss's fate and Peter's fate in where she ends up. I was very conflicted about it when I first read it, but upon a reread, it's not as bleak as I once thought it was. So on a reread, I definitely have a more like hopeful takeaway from the ending of Mockingjay. But in terms of like Coin's end, in terms of Snow's end, it was beautiful, the fact that it was like pretty much simultaneously, you know? It actually seemed like by the end of it as well, because it said, oh, we weren't sure if Snow like choked on his own blood or if he was trampled in the crowd. No one really knows exactly how Snow died. I mean, if they did an autopsy, I'm sure they'd find out. But it's the fact that at the end, it could have been the fact that Snow was the one who ended up taking his own life because like he ended up choking on his own blood, potentially. That's one that I think is probably the most likely, is the fact that after everything he's done, he caused so much devastation and death to everyone around him that in the end, all he ended up bringing down was himself. And I kind of love the idea of someone in power taking themselves down. It's almost like all of the consequences of their actions have caught up with them, and boom, Snow is gone. The way that Coin was like behind him, and Katniss just lifts her bow up just a little bit, shoots it, and then Coin falls over the balcony dead. Oh, like that was brilliant. That was brilliant. But the implications of that, even like Snow's final conversation with Katniss, telling her like, now I'm not above killing children, but I'm not wasteful. And didn't we promise each other that we wouldn't lie to one another? There's like this weird connection in chemistry between Katniss and Snow in a like, you know, hero-villain kind of way. You know, a bit like how the Batman needs the Joker in order to like kind of function in a way. It felt almost like that by the end of this book, that Katniss kind of needed Snow in a way to, I don't know, like have that drive and have that goal and that purpose. So again, I thought it was brilliant on Suzanne Collins' part to end up having her not be the one to kill Snow at the end. Like that is just genius. Like what a swerve, what a curveball. And these books have been so great at showing us a twist, giving us a twist out of nowhere. Like every single book has had at least one, and Mockingjay just continued that tradition. So yeah, it did look like Coin was the one who orchestrated that hovercraft that ended up taking poor Prim's life. Oh, like why? Why? Like we were so close. But it does feel very quick. Like the end of this feels very quick. I'll get to Finnick in a second because you know what I'm about to talk about that. But like the end of the war and like kind of the wrapping up of the story, it does happen pretty quickly. But I guess when like something turns in the favor of someone, it would. And Katniss didn't really have a big hand in like capturing Snow or anything like that. As soon as Prim died, that was pretty much the end of it. You know, like people's favor towards the Capitol, towards Snow turned because it looked like, yeah, he did that and he orchestrated that. So that was a really clever way of turning everyone against Snow. It's a genius move. Poor Prim, though, having to be caught in the crossfire when she had, again, like her whole future ahead of her. It's so gutting. It is honestly good. And the way it happens in like the slowness of like that part and how close we are to the end. First, I got a glimpse of the blonde plait down her back. Then as she yanks off her coat to cover a wailing child, I noticed the ducktail formed by her untucked shirt. I have the same reaction I had the day Effie Trinket called her name at the reaping. Like, we don't start with like Prim's name. In fact, during this entire paragraph section here at the end of chapter 24, Prim's name isn't even mentioned, but we know and love her so, so much. And we get the reference here of Katniss having the same reaction as to the day of the reaping, because that is when Katniss wants to protect her sister. That's when she fights to protect her sister. We don't need to know Prim's name to know that she is here, and she's a goner. She's a goner. I'm almost there, almost at the barricade when I think she hears me, because for just a moment she catches sight of me, her lips form my name, and that's when the rest of the parachutes go off. And then after that, it's just like a whirlwind. It is just a whirlwind of Snow having been captured, the conversation with Snow, but I wasn't watching Coin, I was watching you, Mockingjay, and you were watching me. I'm afraid we are both being played for fools. Oh, so it really is like Coin the biggest antagonist in that sense. She is in this moment 100%, and like the lengths that she's gone to win this war, 100%. But still, like the Capitol and Snow, they do need to pay for their crimes. They've been the major antagonists this entire time. And if it wasn't for them to begin with, then all of this wouldn't have happened in the first place. Colleen fought dirty by the end. And she won for a second until Katniss, whose first mind wouldn't go to, backing Colleen 100%. She was a threat until Katniss cut her down. The face of the rebellion, our girl on fire. And she was still on fire in this book. She was still literally on fire as well at one point. It honestly just broke my freaking heart. It broke my heart so much to get the implications of what happened to Prim, what happened to Finnick. Even that as well goes by so quickly when they're underground and they're running away from these mutt things, these lizard creatures. Far below, I can just make out Finnick struggling to hang on as 3 mutts tear at him. As one yanks back his head to make the death bite, something bizarre happens. It's as if I'm Finnick watching images of my life flash by. The master of a boat, a silver parachute, Mags laughing, a pink sky, Beatty's trident, Annie in her wedding dress, waves breaking over rocks. Then it's over. I sight the hollow from my belt and I choke out Nightlock, 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 release it, hunch against the wall with the others as the explosion rocks the platform and bits of mutt and human flesh shoot out of the pipe and shower us. That is the end of Finnick, and I'm like, why? He didn't deserve that. He was finally happy with Annie. Oh, and I forgot this as well. The fact that Annie has his child. That poor child is going to grow up without a father. Oh, it was he had his happiness. He had his happiness. But he had a fight in the war. He was a part of it, a huge part of the Capitol. And he could have had his happy ending. He should have had his happy ending with his family. But no, this is the price of war. Not everyone survives, and it's devastating. I've barely mentioned a lot of the team that accompanies Katniss, but I still felt very bad when Boggs died, and he ends up stepping on a bomb thing that takes his legs off and he dies. That was awful. And I did feel bad for him. And the fact that he kind of gave Katniss some final words of don't trust everyone, that is interesting. But then again, he did also say kill Peter, and that turned out to be not the right thing to do. Fortunately, that doesn't happen. Oh, you know who else I forgot even existed? Tigress. I totally forgot about Tigress and everything there as well. That was pretty awesome. I did love this book more when we had Katniss being in the middle of everything, and she was going through the Capitol, and they had to disguise themselves and keep out of people's way and making sure no one saw them. I loved those parts so much. It felt exciting. It felt like Katniss was really in the center of the story again. I probably would have preferred this book a bit more if it had lasted a little bit longer. I don't know if maybe it's because the setting of District 13 itself feels very sterile. It feels very plain in a way. Obviously there was a necessary need for it being underground and stuff, but I feel we didn't really get enough variation there. One thing that didn't sit right with me was when Peter and Gail were talking about Katniss as if she was a slab of meat. I do like the fact that they were kind of bonding a little bit about when Tigress says, oh, I don't know what to do with Katniss, and neither do they, so they kind of have this little bonding moment. Then we have Gail says, I guess it's Katniss's problem who to choose. And then Peter's I wonder how she'll make up her mind. And Gail's oh, that I do know. Katniss will pick whoever she thinks she can't survive without. And I'm just can we just keep Katniss's name out of your fucking mouth? Especially when it comes to her love life, her personal life. I'm just even Katniss is confused about that. Why are we discussing it? Why are we talking about it? And what do you mean? Even Katniss is pissed at this. What do you mean she'll pick someone she can't survive without? It does make her sound selfish. It does make her sound yeah, she will only pick someone because it will progress herself and not for genuine emotion and feeling. And Katniss is fed up by this point. I'm fed up by this point of people, taking Katniss's emotions away from her. It's she hasn't been able to feel anything because she's been overtly abused. She's been overtly manipulated by pretty much everyone. The Capitol, even District 13, Snow, Coin, Plutarch, everyone is used Katniss in some way. And it's who gave you the right to even debate, oh, I wonder who Katniss is going to choose? If I was writing this book, none of yous. She would choose herself. And she even says, I can survive just fine without them. Exactly, she can. Although there are moments when she actually really does need human connection and it makes her feel safe and loved. Sure, if we forget about that. But between them two, I'm sorry, they were both working my last nerve by this point. And I know Peter's been through some shit, but he was really, really working my last nerve by this point. Not surprised when they get to the capital and they find out like all people who have been like refugees in the capital, even like the capital's people. Oh, kitty cat. Oh, she's so beautiful. Hello, beautiful girl. Sorry, just a stray cat. Oh, just come right up to the window. Oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, sorry, I need it. Hello. Ash and Toby have gone to bed. They're sleeping. They're sleeping. Okay. She probably wants food, so I'm going to put some out at the front for her. Oh my god, sorry. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, so when they're in the capital, even the capital's people turn them away. So those who live in the choice apartments of the inner city have not flung open their doors to house the displaced. On the contrary, most of them bolted their locks, drove their shutters and pretended to be out. I mean, May on Halloween, but also when you see the capital's people, they are only out for themselves. Like a lot of them are so selfish. And it does show you like the difference between them and the districts, because the districts people, they would have their doors open. They would welcome, you know, people in 100%. Really does show you the dichotomy between the districts and the capital and how they were raised. They were raised so differently, which is why I do love the fact that Katniss has a lot of leniency towards people from the capital, because that was the way that they were raised and they have no idea like how else to function. So for them to be raised on the games, for instance, and for them to think that's the right thing because that's how they were raised, Katniss can say like both sides of it. And that's kind of why I like her as a main character. She doesn't just write someone off because of their upbringing. She actually tries to look underneath that and tries to like sympathize with as many people as possible. Yep, so they're on their way to Snows Mansion. All hell breaks loose. A really beautiful analogy as well when Katniss, after Prim's death, the ones I loved fly as birds in the open sky above me, soaring, weaving, calling me to join them. I want so badly to follow them, but the sea water saturates my wings, making it impossible to lift them. The ones I hated have taken to the water, horrible scaled things that tear my salty flesh with needle teeth, biting again and again, dragging me beneath the surface. Isn't that just like how Katniss has felt this entire time? Like she wants to fly high, she wants to soar with her family and friends, the people she loves, but she's constantly being dragged down. She's constantly being thrown to the floor and like pretty much drowning in the fact that all of these people who have been like using and abusing her are just like dragging her down. They're suffocating her. And so like a lot of the writing chops in this one really do shine. Oh, and then we finally get Effie. Oh my gosh, I was hoping she would be okay. Apparently she was imprisoned. She looks absolutely fine. And she even says, hello, Katniss. Well, it looks like we've got another big day ahead of us. So why don't you start your prep and I'll just pop over and check on the arrangements. Like, the fact that Effie is just like untouched, I'm so happy about that. But this was like the tiniest little bit that we get of her. I honestly wish we got way more Effie in this book. I really do. I'm glad that the will they won't they with Gale was kind of answered and just like totally obliterated by this point. So the bombs that went off in the parachutes, like it goes off, but then it goes off again. And that was like an invention that Gale had like thought about with Plutarch and I think BT as well. Like they were talking about this earlier in the book. So kind of says that as like it might have been Gale's invention, it might not have been, but the fact that she's even thinking that has kind of like ruined that entire friendship. So she asked, was it your bomb? I don't know, neither does BT, he says. Does it matter? You'll always be thinking about it. He waits for me to deny it. I want to deny it, but it's true. Even now I can see the flash that ignites her, feel the heat of the flames, and I will never be able to separate that moment from Gale. My silence is my answer. That was the definitive end to Team Gayness. There is no way that she could look at him and not say Prim and where his mind went in order to like construct something so violent and so bloody. But that still doesn't mean that I wanted her to end with Peter by the end of it, because it felt like Peter was like her only choice by the end. Like all of her choices were stripped from her and she's kind of only left with Peter. At least that's how I kind of pretty much felt the very first time I read the Hunger Games series. I thought, oh, so she really does have no say in the matter. She doesn't have, you know, Snow to fight anymore. She doesn't have to play in any game. She doesn't have to be anyone's chess piece. So like when she says goodnight to her bow after shooting coin, she puts it down. She says, goodnight, I whisper to the bow in my hand and feel it go still. Like that felt symbolic to me that she is done. Like that's it. It's over for her now. She doesn't need to direct her energy towards someone to take them down in order to stop her oppressors or the people's oppressors or anything like that. That's the end of it. Good night. She says that. She has moved on. And then she is shipped off to 12 to live out the rest of her days. And she's there with Haymitch, which I do kind of like. I did miss the dynamic between Haymitch, Peter, and Katniss. I do love those as a three. So we finally do get like a little sliver of that by the end of this too. So I don't hate the fact that Peter has joined Katniss in District 12. That is Haymitch Peter and Katniss in the victors' houses again. And like, I don't really like fully hate that idea. It still feels like a little bit of a bleak ending though at the same time, because like she doesn't have her sister. Her mother isn't like part of her life anymore, really. She phones her up, but like her mother is like, I think she's building a hospital in District 4 or something, or she's helping out there. And so like Katniss is very solitary again. Like she's very alone after everything she's been through, after all she's sacrificed over the years. She is like kind of, well, she's traumatized still. And I guess that's another reason why I do like Peter and Katniss together, is because they complement each other so well. But again, it felt like she didn't really have another choice but Peter. You know, it felt like all of her options were robbed from her, and she's just left with that. And at least by the end of this, Peter doesn't want to kill Katniss, so like the hijacking and stuff seems to have worn off. But they both still have PTSD. They both still feel, you know, awful after everything that's happened, and they seek comfort in each other. Oh, and we found out that Madge died. She did die in the bombings in District 12, which, oh, breaks my heart. Madge, quiet and kind and brave, the girl who gave me the pin that gave me a name. Yeah, she did start the Mockingjay thing, which, you know, I rewatched the first Hunger Games movie last night with my patrons, and they cut Madge out completely. It had Katniss buying the Mockingjay pin just randomly in the black marketplace in District 12. So she just like bought it. Like she didn't actually get it off Madge or anything. So I kind of like the fact that in the books there was someone giving it to her. Oh, and then the scene when Katniss breaks down to Buttercup and she says she's dead, you still catch she's dead. And like it sounds like Buttercup is like crying as well. And then they both comfort each other, even though they've never, you know, liked one another. They both comfort each other because they both love Prim. Ah, oh, it's gonna get me. It is gonna get it, but it's not. It's not making me cry. I have no more tears to give. We both end up crying again, only this time we comfort each other. Oh, I like the idea of the book that Haymitch, Peter, and Katniss all contribute to remember everyone who we've lost. Strange bits of happiness, like the photo of Finnick and Addie's newborn son. Oh my god, Finnick has a son. He has a son. And also, I do like the fact that it sounds like District 12 is like coming back to life again, because a few people do return there. And that's kind of like how we end this. Peter and I grow back together. His arms are there to comfort me, and eventually his lips. What I needed to survive is not Gale's fire, kindled with rage and hatred. I have plenty of fire myself. What I need is the dandelion in the spring, the bright yellow that means rebirth instead of destruction, the promise that life can go on, no matter how bad our losses, that it can be good again, and only Peter can give me that. So after, when he whispers, "You'll love me, real or not real," I tell him, real. And there's an epilogue. They've had children together. It is sweet. And it does give the idea that life has gone on. Life has improved. It's improved enough because Katniss never wanted children, but that was because she didn't want to raise them in a world where there were the Hunger Games, and she feared for her children's lives. So now she doesn't have to fear for their lives anymore, which gives the impression that her giving birth, her having 2 kids at the minute, maybe more in the future, shows that she has overcome those fears. She has conquered those fears because the future in Panem is bright. The dandelion in the spring, it has come to fruition. She now has hope, and it's not a scary world anymore. And I do love that. I'm glad that she loves Peter for real, and she seems happy, she really does. But it wasn't like the ending I envisioned, which is probably why I didn't write the series. But I still love it. Like, I still love this with every fibre I have in me. Saying that though, I am giving Mockingjay 4 stars. It's not my favourite in the series. It is very, like, war heavy. I do, again, like, love the themes that it explores and the messages it sends. I think it's done extremely well. But yeah, out of the original trilogy, this is my least favourite one of them. But still brilliant. Still fantastic. Still love it. Part of me wants to, like, just give all of the books 5 stars, just out of nostalgia. Just out of the fact that I do love them, like, as a whole. The entire reading experience is a 5-star. But, like, on their own, the books, apart from Catching Fire, they're not quite a 5-star for me personally, but they are so close. And the Hunger Games series is one of my favorite book series of all time. It's just true. It's just a fact. But objectively, the book itself is a 4-star, but the series as a whole, 5-star. So that is the original trilogy done, complete. Very happy that I managed to do it. The first time I've reread this in such a long time. And it's actually the first time I've reread these books before reading the prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I'm very curious to see if I end up enjoying The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes more on a reread, now that my expectations are lower, and I have just reread President Snow in these books, so maybe it might give me some new understanding, some new context, and some new things to pick up on in my reread of this that I never picked up on before, because I hadn't reread the original series in such a long time. Yes. Well, apparently Snow lands on top. So I guess Snow isn't a bottom, which I should have known. I do still have rather like mixed feelings going into this one, knowing that this is the sort of origin story for Cunnilingus Snow, because with him, you know the way he turns out, you know that he's irredeemable by the Hunger Games series. So in a way, it's like really hard to feel emotion for him, to feel sympathy for him. At the start of this, we find out that his family isn't as wealthy as he would like. You know, he's lost his parents, and there's so many like parallels between Snow and Katniss. In a way, like if you really dig deep into this, you will see that there are quite a few parallels between them. And it's really interesting to say that because you would think that the Snow that's presented to us at the start of this book would get on with Katniss had, you know, things been different, had Snow not grown into the person he becomes. Because, you know, Snow is an orphan, Katniss isn't an orphan, but her relationship with her mother is very complex and complicated. That kind of felt like Katniss was the mother in that relationship. So in a way, you could argue that Katniss was probably like a little bit orphaned as well when she lost her father and stuff. And Snow is like struggling financially, obviously like not in the way that Katniss did, but there are just so many like parallels between them. And one like major difference is that Katniss had her sister Prim. And I think Prim, like when you look back on the series and you kind of make a comparison with Snow, you see Prim as kind of like a motivating factor in Katniss's journey and her character arc in the way that Katniss like ends up like being the person she is. A lot of it is because of her sister. And in this one, Snow doesn't have any siblings or anything, but his mother was going to give birth to a baby girl, but both of them were lost. Both of them died. So Snow never got his Prim. And I'm wondering like how different Snow would have been had he had a sibling to look after. Like, would it make him more empathetic in the future? Would that have changed his course? Like, I don't know. But it's interesting to see how Katniss progressed in the Hunger Games series with Prim as a huge part of her life versus Snow, who doesn't really have anyone, but I guess like his cousin Tigress and his grandmother. And there's a lot of fucking singing in this, which it's reminding me of Lord of the Rings. Tom Bombadil, anyone? Like, this is what it's like giving at the minute, and I didn't make the connection, but as I was on Patreon reading sprints yesterday, someone said, oh, well, it kind of makes sense with the title of this book, and I was like, you know what? You're not wrong. It does say Songbirds in the title, so I guess, yeah, there would be like a lot of singing. I don't really love any singing in books, really. I don't like the massive Tom Bombadil parts in Lord of the Rings, for instance. So I'm not really the biggest fan of like all of the singing. And Lucy Gray Bard, I think is how you pronounce her surname, she is the new Tom Bombadil, shall we say. But it was like very captivating because we see the Hunger Games years and years and years ago before they've worked out all of the kinks in their system, and it's still like early days on it. It's only the 10th Hunger Games, so all of the things that we've come to expect from the Hunger Games doesn't happen in this one. Like, it's absolutely awful what happens to them, but like some of the differences, so like when Lucy's name is mentioned, like the reaping, it's actually the mayor who digs around the name and reads it out, but it looks like the mayor here said Lucy's name even though it most likely wasn't Lucy's name that was drawn. He seems to have like some kind of vendetta or grudge against Lucy, and so in retaliation Lucy ends up putting like a snake down this girl's back who must be like the mayor's daughter or something like that. Even Sejanus, I don't know why there's so many like anus names in this, like Coriolanus, no, and Sejanus. Lots of anuses. Yeah, Sejanus says, I bet they rigged her name wasn't on that slip. He pulled out a slip of paper and barely glanced at it. The District 12 girl tribute is Lucy Gray Bard. And Lucy Gray Bard, yeah, she puts like some kind of like lizard or snake down this girl's shirt thing, like down her blouse. And then the mayor helps his daughter and she's like wet herself. It seems like they have some kind of grudge against Lucy. Because if they called her name out and she wasn't even chosen for it. So it just shows you how like easy it is to rig the Hunger Games in the early days until they got, you know, like representatives from the capital to read out the names and make it more like a show. So apparently they are struggling to get people to watch the Hunger Games. And that's interesting considering that's all people talk about in the Hunger Games series. But in this, like, people don't really want to watch it, and for good reason. Obviously, like, there's a lot of death and awfulness, and people don't really want to see that. And I guess even people in the capital don't really want to see that as well. But it's interesting to see, like, how it's starting to develop. Even Snow is having some say into like, oh, we should like bet on the tributes. We should be like actually feeding them because they don't even get fed. They don't even get fed on the like way here to the capital. I'm saying the way here as if like I'm in the capital right now. I'm not. Although I will be in a second because one of my cats is having a shit right now. Why is it every time I film? Yeah, like no one did a Snow being like, oh, well, nobody wants to watch the games if the tributes are like dying before they even get there. And they're like so weak, they're too weak to fight. So I am finding those things interesting and like seeing like how it comes about. I don't think it's like enough to like make me really love this book though, to be honest. As much as I'm like interested in this world, 100%, it's not really enough when I'm not really loving or like rooting for the characters, because even like with President Snow, I know what he becomes and I don't like him. I despise him. So to see him be like, oh, I might not have enough money to go to the academy and, you know, get the scholarship or whatever like that, I don't care. I genuinely don't care. I'm not rooting for him. I'm not even rooting for this like flirtation between Lucy and Snow. I can't really quite remember like how this turned out. I think maybe Lucy breaks his heart or something like that, but I can't remember. And I can't remember if that's why he ends up going down the path he does. But even then, I'm just like, it's nice to see him with some empathy and with some emotion. And he does like try with Lucy. He does have like initiative and he gives her food. And I had no idea that Tigris was his cousin. I totally forgot about that. Seeing Tigris is pretty amazing, knowing that Tigris ends up helping them in Mockingjay. So something obviously happens between Snow and Tigris. I can't remember if it happens in this book or if it happens in the years between this book and the first Hunger Games book. Oh, yeah, going back to the tributes as well, they put them in the zoo. This is before, you know, they treat the tributes with like some, I guess, dignity before they make them kill each other. With like Katniss's Hunger Games, you know, getting on the train and it's like really lovely and they're getting like pampered and stuff. Like that is obviously a stark change to them being starved and put in cages in the zoo for people of the capital to like look at them. And it's so nice the way that Lucy talks to the capital children, even though she should be resenting everyone there because of what they're doing. It's so awful for them. Yeah, and that's why I didn't really care that much when Arachne, I think her name is, I didn't care when she died. Like, she was dangling this sandwich in front of the, I think the District 11 girl, the person that she has to, because like in this book, for the first time ever, people from the academy have to like mentor the tributes. So it's not the previous victors, which by this point there won't be that many victors. There would only have been 9 victors. So not every single district would have had a victor yet. So in this one, they had the students, including Snow, be mentors to them. And Snow has to mentor Lucy. But yeah, Arachne, she has, I believe it was a girl from 11. At one point, the girl reached through the bars and Arachne withdrew the sandwich, drawing a laugh from the audience. So like she's treating her like shit, absolute shit. Arachne waved to the crowd and then took a bite of the sandwich herself. So then in one movement, the tribute yanked Arachne forward and slit her throat. And Arachne dies, and I feel nothing. Like, I literally feel nothing for Arachne. And it's the same with that girl who puts her hand in the snakes and gets bitten. Clemencia. They've got some weird names in this, I'm telling you. Clemencia, she puts her hands in, hooked a sheet with her fingernail, lifted it up, the snake stirred. If you're familiar, if they have pleasant associations with your scent, they'll ignore you, and you scent something foreign, that would be a threat, said Dr. Gold. Dr. Gold is awful as well. Like, there's barely anyone I'm rooting for apart from Lucy. The look of alarm on Clemencia's face, she yanked her hand from the tank, but not before half a dozen neon snakes sank their fangs into her flesh. Like, that's pretty awful. But like, I don't care. Like that happened to her. And it seems as well that she might be transforming into one of them also. I cannot remember that from the first time I read this. I remember there being snakes. But I can't remember if that's because I was remembering the title of the book. But yeah, when she sees Snow later on and she's still in the hospital, her parents haven't even seen her yet. She seems to be like isolated from everyone else. Yeah, her skin seems to be transforming. So that's kind of ominous. That's quite sinister. But I didn't really care all that much about her. Yeah, there's like an explosion at the arena where they're supposed to be doing the Hunger Games. And Snow gets trapped under this thing and Lucy saves him. That was a nice moment. That was nice of her to do. And Snow is like, I owe you. Like, Snow owes Lucy and he will do everything that he can to help her win. I hope I can repay you in some way. So like, he does owe a debt to her. And also, it seems like there have been quite a few mentors, like some of these students at the academy have died. I think like 3 people have died now. 3 mentors dead, 3 hospitalized, 4 if you count the Clemencia, 6 tributes dead, 1 escaped. And this is before the Hunger Games even began. Like, this is messy. The capital are messy. Trying to get the Hunger Games sorted is messy. Obviously, I want them to fail with this Hunger Games malarkey, but I know they're going to go for another 65 years after this. How old is President Snow in the Hunger Games? I think he's 18 in this. And then plus 65. So he's what, like 83? 82, 83 in the Hunger Games? I haven't seen the movie for this yet either, which is surprising considering how much I love the original Hunger Games films. You would think I would jump at the chance to watch this film, but I didn't. I never watched it. Also, Snow is also talking about, you know, giving food to the tributes as the games are happening. They actually talked about getting sponsors for the people and like people waging you know, money on tributes and stuff like that. So like, yeah, I find that interesting, but it's not enough for an entire like 500 odd page book. This is the longest book by about 100 pages, and I need stronger characters in order for me to feel like the original series has Katniss, Peter, Gale, Finnick, Joanna. Like there's so many characters that you root for, but in this one, I'm only rooting for Lucy. In the other tributes, but we don't really know enough about them yet. The Sejanus guy as well, actually, he seems to be quite good. Like, he was from a district, but him and his family have, like, moved up the ranks. And it's almost like the working class have, you know, risen, and Snow is a little bit apprehensive of the working class and how they have, like, status and money in the capital. He feels that's a bit iffy. So it's interesting to see, like, the class dynamics. That is good. And I don't think Suzanne Collins is trying to make us empathize with Snow. I don't think she's trying to make us feel anything for him. I think this is just like exploring his origin story. And if you just take it at that face value, it's fine. Like, honestly, I do love being back in this world. I love finding out more about things and finding more about Snow. But at the minute, he's not like really the villain that I've come to know and expect him to be. And that, again, is fine. He's acting like a good guy at the minute. But I kind of want the more villainous aspect of him. I kind of want to see more of that. And I can't remember how much of that we actually see. And it's obviously fine to have like more stories in the Hunger Games world that maybe don't live up to the original series. That's absolutely fine. I will eat anything up that Suzanne Collins writes, 100%. Anything in the Hunger Games world, I'm reading it. No question about it. But I think you already get a sense, just like from the first few chapters alone, that this is not going to live up to the original series. And I'm trying to like taper my expectations for Sunrise on the Reaping, which is out tomorrow. It is currently Monday, 17th of March. So this is a moment in time for sure. And I'm so excited for it still. Like, this will not dampen my excitement for Sunrise on the Reaping. I think one of the earliest red flags of like the whole Snow and Lucy potential relationship is when, you know, Lucy does her ballad of the salad. Snow feels jealous that she is singing about someone else, even though she's only known Snow for like 2 minutes. And she has this ballad that she's written, and he feels betrayed by it. Like, he says he didn't like the idea of anyone else having it either. Although the song had been a clear success, he felt somehow betrayed by it, even humiliated. He felt jealous, and, you know, he does mention every now and then that Lucy is his. Like, she depends on him so much. They're both in a pretty tough spot, absolutely. But the fact that Lucy's survival does depend a lot on Snow, it feels like Stockholm Syndrome in a way. Like, if Lucy, I can't remember how it goes, but like, if Lucy ever felt anything for him, it would just be the fact that she wants to survive, she wants to live. Which, again, the parallels with Katniss and Peter in the first Hunger Games and having to pretend that they were in love in order to survive. There's just so many things between this and the earlier Hunger Games books that does kind of go back and forth between them in like some kind of conversation. And I do like a lot of the nods again still. Like, we have Lucky Flickerman, who is the, well, he's a weatherman, but he just kind of like hosts the Hunger Games. Again, it's not like we have in the first and second Hunger Games where it's like a proper circus, there's a proper entertainment show. They have a full block out on primetime TV. It's nothing like that, really. This whole section was definitely more interesting than the first part, especially since the 10th Hunger Games does happen. We're rooting for Lucy. Snow is rooting for Lucy. When I told you you mattered to me, I didn't mean as my tribute, I meant as you, Lucy Greybard, as a person, as my friend, as my ... What was the word for it? Sweetheart, girlfriend? You're the most incredible girl I've ever met, and I don't want to lose you. I refuse to lose you. Please don't cry. Again, I'm like, how much does he actually like love her, really? Do I need to try and forget the fact that he does become President Snow and realize that he is a teenage boy here and he hasn't done the things that he's done? This is what makes this a bit of a tough read, is that I know the things he does in the future. Obviously, there's that whole conversation about time travel, like, would you go back in time to kill certain people, knowing what they become? But would you be able to do that to a child? Would you be able to do that to, you know, an innocent teenager because they haven't done that yet? So, like, it feels like I'm condemning Snow before he's even done anything. And I think that's just, like, hard not to do. Part of me wants to root for it because the things he says can be very sweet. And this could be what ends up turning him to the dark side. Maybe he does get rejected, and I genuinely can't remember how it unfolds for Lucy and Snow. It's going to be made even harder now because he's being made a peacekeeper by the end of the second part. So now he'll be getting shipped off, I'm sure, to one of the districts. Cunnilingus headed directly to the recruitment center, where he became Panem's newest, if not shiniest, peacekeeper. So I totally forgot about that. I forgot that happened. I did remember Lucy wins the Hunger Games, and that was mainly because Snow did help in a little bit more than just, you know, being a supporter and being a mentor, but he does like kind of cheat a little bit. I did really enjoy what he did with the snakes. Like, I like the tying back to what happened in part 1 with that whole snake section where like we find out about the scent and they won't attack you if they are familiar with your scent. So he drops that tissue into the crate of all those snakes, and that does help Lucy. Although is it because she sings to them? Which sounds ridiculous saying it out loud. I can't wait to see if they adapt this in the film. But you know when she's singing so much to the snakes? Like, it's a little bit ridiculous, come on. It's a little bit strange. Yeah, she's just singing. Every snake in the arena appeared to have fallen subject to her siren song and flocked to her. Like, what the fuck is going on? And it's quite a long song as well. Like, I'm sorry. I would have taken Lucy out myself just to shut her the hell up. But there were some like very interesting scenes in this one, like very exciting scenes. Like when Coriolanus helps Sejanus, when the anus helps the other anus, and Sejanus goes into the actual arena to cover the dead tribute, because Sejanus has had like some breakdown because he sees the atrocities that they're doing and he doesn't agree with it. And I do love seeing him stand up and be like, this is wrong, and he actually like storms out. Like, that was pretty good. It's nice to still have people in the capital who really do feel it. And some of the other people as well in the academy, like some of the other like students, they do seem to feel like it's wrong to continue to fight, even though they thought, oh, I thought the war was over, so why are we still doing this? Why are we still fighting and stuff? And it's like keeping control and making sure that nobody forgets. But I did enjoy when Snow went into the actual arena itself to get his friend, who he says, oh, he's not actually my friend, but he's obviously like putting up pretenses. So again, it's kind of hard to know what Snow is doing sometimes. Like, he'll tell us, oh, I don't like this person, but then he'll demonstrate the opposite in his actions. So it's kind of hard to read sometimes. But, you know, sometimes that's good for his character, and I do like that. But I really do wish that we'd had a bad boy from the start. Like, I don't mind a villain origin story if I see a bit more of that villain. I'm over 300 pages in, and so far, like, he would have to have such a drastic change for him to become the dickhead he becomes in the later series. The way that Dr. Gole, hate Dr. Gole as well, the way that they are like, oh, so you were in the arena, you had to kill one of them, and they were about to kill you, how does that make you feel? He says, I think I underestimated how much they hate us. And when you realize that, what was your response? She asked. I wanted them dead. I wanted every one of them dead. And Dr. Gole is like, that's transformative. And Coriolanus is like, was it? She says, wasn't it? More than I could have hoped. I needed you to get Janus out of the arena, of course, but I wanted you to taste that as well. Even if it killed me, asked Coriolanus. And this is what I disagree with Dr. Gole. Without that threat of death, it wouldn't have been much of a lesson. What happened in that arena, that's humanity undressed. The tributes and you too. How quickly civilization disappears. All your fine manners, education, family background, everything you pride yourself on, stripped away in the blink of an eye, revealing everything you actually are. A boy with a club who beats another boy to death. That's mankind in its natural state. It's a state that you forced these children to be part of. Coriolanus would never have done that had you not had him in the actual arena. The kids who are fighting for their lives would not be fighting for their lives if you didn't put them in the arena in the first place. The hypocrisy, the ignorance of the people in the capital, the people who are running these games, and how this ends up going and rubbing off on Snow when Snow is like, are we really as bad as all that? And Dr. Gole's like, I would say yes, absolutely. What do you think? And Coriolanus says, I think I wouldn't have beaten anyone to death if you hadn't stuck me in that arena. Literally, they're being forced to do this. This isn't a natural state. You can blame on the circumstances, the environment, but you made all the choices you made, no one else. He was forced to make those choices. Like, he literally had no other option because they put him there. They're the ones who told him to go in the arena to save his friend. They're the ones who literally put that club in his hand and said, you're going to have to fend for yourself, dearie. Oh my god, like, honestly, it makes me so angry I mean, obviously that's great because I totally disagree with them, but at least Suzanne Collins is showing me exactly how they think, and I do kind of like that angle. But that was an exciting moment, you know, going into the arena. Like, Snow was actually in the arena at one point. Very interesting as well to see like the attempts to give the gifts to the tributes as well, considering it was like such a good system in the Hunger Games, but to see it actually have like so many flaws in the system, like the actual bottle of water like cracking and sinking in the soil, and the tribute didn't even get to have it, was kind of interesting to see. Really like that Sejanus really wants to make a change and make a stand. Sejanus like being in the actual games and allowing one of the tributes to kill him. He says, it's the only way I might possibly make a statement, let the world see me die in protest. Even if I'm not truly capital, I'm not district either. So like protests, standing up. Again, it's like a really prevalent theme, something I always appreciate in Suzanne Collins' works because I think she does it brilliantly. She shows it very well through the character of Sejanus. Even though I can't take that name seriously, oh my god. And Snow is the one who talks him down and tells him, what do you want to do? Fight the tributes or fight for them? Maybe you could make changes too, good ones. If you live, you could get money, you can continue on, but you can make good choices. You can do those things. It's like being very reasonable and it just conflicts with everything. I can't deal with it. I like Lysistrata. She is the one who has one of the tributes. Jessup, the other District 12 guy, they say that he's gone rabid and she stops Snow from using his own money to scare him with like water. And she's like, no, let me, here's my tribute after all. She began to order bottle after bottle. Her face registered little emotion, but a single tear slid down her cheek. If Jessup can't win, I want Lucy Gray too. Like, there's quite a lot of empathy with these kids as well. Obviously, they can't really do much in their position right now. But again, it's still like quite nice to see some of the capital kids have empathy for the district kids. The section's actually like in the Hunger Games bit, like where we see sometimes Lucy, sometimes not, sometimes the other tributes. It isn't as captivating as, again, the original trilogy, because it does sound like they're just like dying off mostly. Sometimes they do fight one another, sometimes allies turn on one another, but it's like a very slow, gradual thing. And obviously that's another thing that they had to work on in the Hunger Games themselves, but it's not really anything that I personally find all that captivating in this book. I liked how Lucy used the snake to kill Treach. That was pretty good. I liked when Lucy was announced the winner. That was awesome because I was rooting for her to win. But yeah, Dean Highbottom catching Snow, being like, I know you cheated. It's the peacekeeper life for you. I still like Tigris. Tigris I do enjoy. And now they have to pay taxes. Snow might lose his apartment. I don't care about that. I hope he loses the apartment. I don't hope Tigris does though, because I do like Tigris. But, you know, sometimes we have these like dramatic moments where a chapter will end with, oh, now I have to pay taxes. I'm like, boo fucking who? We all pay taxes. There is like a genuine effort here to make us sympathize and be on the side of President Snow. Not President Snow because he doesn't become President Snow yet, but Cunnilingus Snow right now, but I feel nothing for him. I don't feel anything for him. And I know he's torn because he really does feel like he loves Lucy. All I can say to that is, Lucy, break his fucking heart. But then again, is that what sets everything off? Well, one more part to go, but this doesn't have the same addictive quality as the Hunger Games trilogy. I know I keep comparing it. I know you're probably bored of it now, but this doesn't have the same addictive style of writing. It doesn't make me want to continue on like and eat it up and just absolutely drink it in. Like, obviously I am, because I love anything in this world. I will read anything in this world, even if it isn't the best Hunger Games novel ever. To have just something in this world, to learn more about it, to get some kind of character in there as well who we know from the original series, is always going to interest me and I'll always want to read it. But I kind of do wish that we saw more evil by this point, because I've got like less than 200 pages to go and this is the biggest Hunger Games book. So I understand people's criticisms of it, absolutely, because I'm kind of one of them, unfortunately. Just not my favorite, but I'm still happy it exists. Everything I wanted to see in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, everything I wanted to see in a President Snow origin story happened in the last 20 pages. What separates this from the original series as well is that this predominantly feels like a love story between Snow and Lucy and the kind of downfall of that. Whereas in the original series, the love story isn't at the forefront of it. So I wonder if that's one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I love this series when it doesn't focus on the romance and the love between characters. But this was mostly Lucy and Snow. You know, Snow, he does get sent to District 12. That's where he does his peacekeeper kind of training, and Lucy is obviously being sent back there as well, and she is doing a lot of performances. Like, she is actually like singing at the Hob, and again, like, it's amazing to see so many references to District 12 in the things that we see. Like, I do love the fact that we do get to see the Hob. I do love the fact that we see the fence with the like the chink in the armor kind of thing that Katniss would go through. I love when Lucy is picking the flowers. I think they grow into potatoes and they're called Katniss, and I love like those little things, like those little nods to the original series. However, it kind of got to a point where it felt a little bit like fan fiction in a way. Like, in a way, we just got like loads of different things from the original series, and we kind of just try to see like how many times we could reference it in this. Like, I love the creation of the hanging tree song. Like, we see, I think it was Arlo in Lil. Arlo was getting hanged in front of everyone, and he was telling Lil to run. And so that whole, are you coming to the tree. You know, and I like that whole song and stuff. I loved seeing the origin of that. Like, that was pretty cool. And it was Lucy Gray who came up with it. So again, love saying that. And I love the fact that we don't actually know what happens to Lucy Gray by the end of it too. Like, she becomes a mystery. She becomes almost like a phantom, some kind of ghost story herself. I don't know if she is like some kind of distant relation to Katniss. It's not really said explicitly. Can you imagine? And we don't actually see them get freaky, but could you imagine if Snow and Lucy, they did conceive a child that Snow obviously never knew about, but could you imagine if that child became like Katniss's grandmother or grandfather? So then it would actually make Snow Katniss's like great granddad or grandfather or something like that. Like, I don't know like how that would work, or the weird twisted family tree there, but could you imagine? It isn't said that that doesn't happen, unless it did and I totally missed it, but I don't think that's the case. That would add another level of weirdness there. The fact that it was like Katniss versus her grandfather in the, you know, original Hunger Games series, you know, in retrospect, looking back on the series and seeing that there, like, that would have been kind of fun, I guess. I felt so sad for Sejanus because, yeah, we do have Snow grapple with his moral compass in the last half of this book. And, oh, you know, actually, I do kind of wish that we smudged part 1 and 2 together and had that as part 1. Have part 2 be him being in District 12 and the fallout with Lucy, the fallout with Sejanus, and, you know, throwing his friend under the bus, essentially, and those cracks in his, like, evil side showing through. Because just having that one moment at the very, very end when he has, like, poisoned Dean Highbottom, the person who made and created the Hunger Games, although we do find out that it was actually Snow's dad who, like, you know, was listening to his ideas and submitted it when Highbottom was like, I actually don't think this is a good idea. Like, this is evil. Like, this is villainy. This is just monstrous. Like, we shouldn't be doing the Hunger Games. It's like so bad. But Snow's dad was the one who submitted it, and lo and behold, that's how the games actually began. But the fact that Snow poisoned Highbottom in the end, that was what we found out in Mockingjay. Those were the secrets that Finnick was sharing with everyone, that Snow was poisoning the people who were supposed to be his allies, in that he would also like take some himself, and that would start like the bleeding in his mouth. And so I would have loved if we had have seen him actually do that and like getting the bleeding in the mouth and all of that, like the really interesting stuff that we left Mockingjay with. That would have been fantastic if that was like part 3 of this book, rather than like part 1. It was really slow and I didn't really feel that invested in it. Part 2 was a little bit better when we got to see how Lucy and Snow were like cheating in the games kind of thing. And then part 3 in District 12 was definitely probably like the better part of it, because we got to see Snow wrestle with his own like morals in that one. So that was like very interesting, because that's what I want to see. I didn't want to read a love story that I knew wasn't going to go anywhere really. It was a love story that I was never going to root for. So I kind of wanted Lucy to like kill Snow. And it was really intense, that scene with them in the forest. Like, they've decided that they're going to run away together, and then they find the weapons because Snow had killed the mayor's daughter in a way of like protecting Lucy, of course. But him saying the murder weapons because he thought, oh, if these exist, then they will always trace back to me and I'm in trouble. So like, it's best if I run away. But seeing those murder weapons in that cabin after Lucy and him have decided to run away was like the turning point for him. And that was like really cool to read about, because that was when I was like, okay, is he going to suppress his love for Lucy in order to further his career, further his life? And yes, he kind of does. Him chasing Lucy through the woods and her doing the whole like trap with the snake stuff, that was like really awesome. Like, I loved that. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to see. That is what I wanted to see. So I'm glad we finally got there in the end. Oh, Sejanus as well when he gets hanged. I was wondering if it would have been Snow actually giving the intel, like using the Jabberjay in order to like send it back to the capital and reveal Sejanus's plan. The fact that he did that automatically when he was recording his friend, his best friend, although at times as well he was like, well, it's not even really my best friend, like I would love to get rid of him, but also like what would happen if I did that? You know what, again, he's a very complex and weird character. But it's when Sejanus gets hanged and he cries out Ma, and then all of the Jabberjays pick it up as his last word, and they're like screaming it through the forest. Oh my god. But a fantastic scene though. I think most of the good scenes that have happened in this book have happened in part 3. But even then, there were long sections of part 3 being rather dull, because there was that really long stretch where Snow was accompanying Lucy and the Corvi to like the woods, like seeing the meadow, seeing the lake that we know Katniss loved. There were really long sections where not an awful lot was happening. We'll have like a little reference to the Hunger Games, which would like be dropped in there, I guess, just as a way of like keeping our attention, and then like moving on. In those sections, like while I did love some of those references, a lot of that was again boring. But the turning point was when Sejanus was like, okay, we're going to be running away, like I want to help them get to the north and stuff like that. That's when it started to get really interesting. And so the rest of part 3 was good, but not all of it. And I struggle with this because, again, I will eat anything up that Suzanne Collins writes. I will eat anything up in this world, and I appreciate more and more books in the Hunger Games series because it does give us little insights into different aspects of the world from different perspectives as well. Like, I love what Suzanne Collins was trying to do with this book, 100%. Seeing things from the eyes of the people who were making the Hunger Games and creating the Hunger Games and leading the Hunger Games. Oh, and even saying like how Snow contributed to the idea of like the victors' houses and having the tributes win something for their districts, so like the districts would benefit from it, just to make them want to win, you know, like to encourage them to root for their victors and in their tributes. So again, I love that. Wish that was focused on a little bit more than the love story. I really did not want this to be a love story, and unfortunately that's what this was predominantly. I do like Lucy Gray as a character. I find her aloof and alluring, and she was a good addition to it. And also, yeah, the fact that they've actually erased the 10th Hunger Games from like history, from everyone's minds essentially. And there's only one master copy of it that Dr. Gole has. So that was interesting, seeing how they would erase Lucy from people's minds in the 10th Hunger Games in general, and like how bad they blew up in their faces when they tried to give the university students the mentorships and trying to make them involved in it, and like how bad that went. I love seeing when it goes wrong for them, and very interesting to see how they correct it and fix it and change it for the future. Dr. Gole as well, actually, I don't have a lot of favorite characters in this book, like, to be honest. Like, I felt bad for Sejanus, but I didn't really like love him or anything. Same with Snow, like I never connected with Snow whatsoever. I like Lucy, and I kind of like Dr. Gole in the sense that they seemed rather sinister and villainous, and that's what I wanted from Snow. Like, I wanted Snow to be villainous throughout, essentially, and that's kind of what I got from Dr. Gole. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but that energy was put into her when really it should have went to Snow for the majority of this book, in my opinion. Like, I would have loved to have seen that. And I did like some of Lucy's friends as well, but all in all, I just didn't fall in love with characters the way I did with the original series. Also, this didn't really have like any twists and turns that made the original trilogy so captivating, because any of the twists and turns of this would just be like, well, I kind of want Snow to like have a bad time. I kind of want Snow to lose. So those times, like say he's put into the Hunger Games himself, like that would have been like interesting had it like lasted a little longer as well. Like that would have been a twist in itself, and I was captivated by that. But just knowing that he was always going to survive, Snow will land on top. Just knowing that kind of eliminated a lot of the tension that I felt from the original series. So the tension wasn't there. There weren't that many plot twists or like reasons to like keep reading and reading. There wasn't really any of that in this. So that is one thing I'm hoping Sunrise on the Reaping has. I hope it has those twists and turns that keeps me reading, even though like we kind of know exactly what happens in the 50th Hunger Games. I'm hoping there are other things around that will keep me invested, because I don't know everything, of course, but just what we do know from Catching Fire, I'm hoping it will keep up the suspense. So this lacked suspense, this lacked characters that I fully loved. So on that note, I will be giving The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes 2 stars. It wasn't a 1 star to me, even though I got bored for the majority of it. It was still fascinating to read. I still love Suzanne Collins' writing style. I actually think I gave this 3 stars when I first read it, which is weird. Like, I do appreciate this more on a reread, but I think just like my taste in general, the more books I've read over the years, I've gone from like a 3 star to a 2 star, because I do think it is totally separate from the original series in my love for the original series. Like, it doesn't touch those. It doesn't get to that standard. So I think 2 stars instead of 3 stars, because this is not just 1 star under Mockingjay. No. But I am super, super glad that I have finished this and included this in my reread. And it's Sunrise on the Reaping Day today. This has just come out today. I am so excited to start this. You have no idea. No idea. Like, it's right here. It is right here. And of course it doesn't match my hardback set underneath. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I have Patreon reading sprints today. I'm going to try and read as much of this as possible because I'm so excited. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes did not put me off. I think I'm probably more excited now that I finished that. And I just, trying so hard to lower my expectations so I'm not disappointed. But I think I'm going to love it. I think I'm going to love it. This is already so much better than Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's so much better already. Oh my god. I finished part 1 and I was wondering if we were going to get the same kind of formula as the first Hunger Games book. You know, we have Katniss in District 12 and her name is called in the Reaping, and she gets the train to the capital, and we have all the same kind of things. And yes, we are following the same framework as that. I have been shocked a couple of times already in how this has been unfolding. And this is exactly what Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is missing. It was that shock factor. It was giving me a little bit something, you know, to really tide me over and make me want to continue reading, make me want to finish the book. And this is already so good. Like, so good. The amount of appearances of characters in the past. I mean, maybe it's feeling a little bit fan servicey in a way. Like, what do you mean? We have Mags back. We have BT. We have Wirus. Like, what do you mean? Like, we have so many people who are back. And we're seeing them, Plutarch as well. I haven't gone a single chapter without seeing a character who we know from the past, or the future, I should say, in the timeline of this story. And obviously, like, it's so good to see them again. Like, when we see the fate of Mags and Wirus in Catching Fire, like, my heart broke for them both. I didn't want either of them to die in Catching Fire. And we get to see them before that, and we get to see them like be mentors. And yeah, that would make sense because that's how the story would go. Like, back in the past when there wasn't an actual victor for District 12, other than Lucy, who has been rubbed from existence, there was like a brief mention of her. Like, oh, there was like one girl who won years and years and years ago, but no one really knows anything about that or her. So that was like a brief little nod to Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And there have been a couple of other times, like when they talked about the Corvies and, you know, little things like that, especially when we're in the District 12 section. That has been very helpful that I just reread Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But I don't think you have to read Ballad of Songbirds before this one to like get those references, really, because you won't even really know that they're actually references. So you can kind of just like read it and like not have to worry about it. But oh my god, like, for one of the first things that really shocked me was the fact that Haymitch's name never even got called during the reaping. So because it is the Quarter Quell and they are getting like double the tributes, first they call Luella McCoy and then Macely Donna. And I was like, okay, we've got the girls. Okay, so then they call Wyatt Callow. And I'm like, okay, so Haymitch's name is going to be the last one called. And boy number 2 is Woodbine Chance. It's like, what? Woodbine? Who the fuck is that? No. Haymitch's name wasn't even mentioned. Then Woodbine, his grey eyes flash defiantly and he whips around and sprints for an alley. His kinfolk shout encouragement and bodies instinctively block the peacekeepers. Just when I'm thinking he might make it, all those Chance kids run like greased lightning. A shot rings out from the Justice Building rooftop and the back of Woodbine's head explodes. Oh, that is how we end chapter 1. So I was like, okay, this is not going to be exactly the same as the Hunger Games. This is going to be its own little thing because one of the tributes who was just being called to be participating in the Hunger Games has just had their head blown off. Like, what? And it wasn't even Haymitch. Haymitch wasn't even called. What do you mean? I didn't know that. I didn't know that was even a thing. So I love the fact that that was surprising. Haymitch does want to go to Lenore Dove and like save her from like the chaos of this crowd. And then they're like, oh, it looks like we found our replacement. And that's Drusilla. Drusilla's a bitch. Drusilla is like the Effie Trinket wannabe who is calling the names. Oh, I hate her. But what I do love is when they're on the train and Macely, I really like Macely. I think Macely might be my favorite character just because like she has quite a mouth on her. Like she really doesn't just let people walk all over her. And some people don't really like her. Katniss's mother did appear in this and she is Macely's friend. So she had a brief appearance at the start, which was kind of cool. But Macely, when she's talking back to Drusilla, careful, might be time to rethink those boots. Wouldn't something close to the ground be safer for a person your age? Drusilla holds off and slaps Macely, who, without missing a beat, slaps her right back. I was like, oh my god, one of these tributes has just slapped someone from the Capitol. I thought, Macely, you're done for. And Macely even says, don't you ever touch me again. And yeah, then Drusilla just like start whipping her with like a riding crop thing, which is so awful, but she still bites back at Drusilla. She's like, you're nothing but a low-rent escort hanging on by your fingernails to the trashiest district in Panem. Who do you think would be more popular, the victor of the Quarter Quell or you? Drusilla's expression twists. I hope you do win. You have no idea what's in store for you then. You know nothing. Jon Snow. And I was like, oh my god, I love the fact that we have 4 tributes. So instead of just 2, like say we just had like Katniss and Peter, like do they have the best personalities? Probably not. But like Haymitch being on this team, and I really do like the other ones as well. Like I really do like Macely, I like Luella. Wyatt's been okay. Like he hasn't really blown me away yet, but I do kind of like the idea that he has a family who does like bets and things, and like how that will factor in now that he's actually in the games. Like will they be betting against their own son and like betting like what kind of death he'll have and stuff like that. Like that's interesting. Oh, we've just met Ampert as well. I really like Ampert. Ampert is from 3, but he's also BT's son. Like, how sad is that? And the fact that he's only in there as well as punishment for Beatty, because Beatty like went against the Capitol, and like this is their punishment now, and Beatty has to mentor his own son. That is like a new form of torture. That's one of the worst things that you could possibly do to someone. Watch the last moments of their child's life and having to be someone who is partly responsible for trying to make them survive. Oh, that's so awful. And Ampert seems so nice as well. He's a little cute. He's like 12 years old. He's so young. But he's trying to rally like all of the other people. Like, so you know how you have the careers and it's usually like District 1 and 2, they like team up. But Ampert is trying to get all the other districts to team up because the numbers will overwhelm the careers. And what I love about this book so far is that we are exploring like strength in numbers. So there was also this question that Plutarch asked that I thought was pretty cool. Oh, sorry, before I talk about that, when Ampert says to Maisley, I wish you were my sister. A funny look crosses her face. I bet she's never heard those words before. I wait for a cutting remark, but she only says, I'll be your sister. Ampert gives her a hug, which she stiffly returns and runs off. Like, oh. See, I'm already feeling so much for these characters. And I didn't in Ballad. Like, I already feel like my heart is starting to get trampled on, considering I know 99% of these people are not surviving. I know Haymitch is the only one coming out of that arena alive. I know Maisley is not going to make it. I know Ampert is not going to make it. And that knowledge eats me up. It eats me up. It does. And this is exactly the effect that I think Suzanne Collins wants as you're reading this. Like, as a prequel, sometimes it can be hit and miss because you kind of know the trajectory and you kind of know some things, and that can take away the tension. But when you are now emotionally invested in these characters, it makes it even worse to read because you know it's coming and you don't want it to. Now I'm reading on in the hopes that something changes, even though I know it's not going to change. Okay, so going back to the topic of like strength in numbers and stuff, Ampert says, it's like this, a disproportionate amount of the time the careers win, but they're only 1/4 of the tributes. We've got 3 times their numbers. So the idea is we get the rest of us together and for a change, we hunt them down instead of letting them hunt us. So that ties into what like Plutarch says, when Plutarch says, you accept the Capitol's conditions. And Haymitch says, because we don't want to end up dead, do you really not say that? And Plutarch says, no, I do. I see the hangings and the shootings and the starvation and the Hunger Games, I do. And yet I still don't think the fear they inspire justifies this arrangement we've all entered into. Do you? Why do you agree to it? Why do I? For that matter, why have people always agreed to it? Well, it's something to think about. There are way more people in the districts than there are in the capital. There are way more people in District 12 than there are peacekeepers. So they're forced into submission, but like they need pretty much everyone to be on their side in order to like rise up, as we've seen in Mockingjay. You know, like, this is something that we know will not happen in this book, unfortunately. But that question of, you know, the numbers thing and kind of working together in order to stand up is something that I think is always so interesting and something Suzanne Collins explores beautifully. So I do like that we have been exploring this. I'm jumping around here, but yeah, going back to District 12, I do feel so bad that Lenore Dove and Haymitch, like their love story does seem to be quite epic. Like he does think the world of her and he does love her. Oh, and there's more singing. There is more singing. Stop. Stop with the singing, please. It's not as bad as Ballad and Songbirds and Snakes, but there's still some singing. But yeah, I felt awful that they are now being torn apart. In Plutarch, like, obviously we know that Plutarch is one of the good guys by Mockingjay, but in this one, he just seems so heartless. Like, he keeps wanting Haymitch's mum and brother to react on camera, and he's like, okay, do it again, cut. Yeah, and even Lenore, like, she waits until they're gone before she like has a proper breakdown so that they don't actually use her tears as entertainment. So like Plutarch there is like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to get these different takes of these families breaking down crying? You know, it's so heartless. He even bribes them. If I can get a usable reaction shot from you, I can give you a minute with Haymitch. Because District 12 aren't allowed to say goodbye to one another, like to their families when they leave, because of the like commotion in the reaping. So they're not going to get to say goodbye to their families. But Plutarch is like, oh, I'll give you 1 minute if you give me some usable shots. That is so bad. That is so heartless. These families are never going to be able to see their children again unless one of them wins. And you're robbing them of that moment. And yet you're like, oh, but if you cry on camera, I'll give you a minute. Well, he gives them 2, but still, it's like, it's taking advantage of the desperation of a grieving family. And that's so gross. But obviously, we have Plutarch have such a huge character journey and a huge character arc, which we might see in this book, maybe, potentially. But we know that he chooses the right side in the end, which I do like. I love a good character arc. Oh yeah, but there's Astrid, aka Katniss's mother. Astrid's the town beauty and rich by District 12 standards. And we do have, what's his name again? Burdock Everdeen. We have Tam Amber mentioned as well from Ballad. And that's pretty much all we get to see of like the Everdeens. So Suzanne probably just wanted that nod because we did know that Katniss's mother did know one of the tributes who goes into the games, Maisley. We know that they were friends, so it makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. I love how that ties into this now. But yeah, that's all we saw of that. And yeah, I'm just really loving it so far. I'm currently doing Patreon sprints. I cannot tell you how relieved I am so far, how good this is. Also, what do you mean? Oh my God, also, there's still so much more to talk about, actually. Why was I about to wrap that up? There's more to talk about. When the District 12 tributes, like they're doing the whole chariot thing, and when like someone sets the fireworks off and the chariot goes ballistic, Lorella falls on the floor, smashes her head open and there's blood, and she's dead. Haymitch puts her body in front of President Snow and applauds, like claps, like, well done. Well done, President. Look what you've done, right? And so now President Snow is with Haymitch at the end of part 1. But what do you mean? Stand in the doorway is Luella McCoy. She's supposed to be dead. Was she not dead? Who is she? Is this Luella? What? That entire scene with Snow was intense. Anyway, how do you end part 1 with what looks like the resurrection of a dead girl? So, did she not actually die? Was it just a flesh wound? Oof, and when Snow tells him, I will orchestrate your death based on your behavior from here on out. You decide what you want Lenore Dove and your mother and that dear little brother of yours to see. You can die clean and fair, or we can open the games with the slowest, most agonizing death ever to befall a tribute. And we have that age-old Snowlands on top. Well, if we burn, you burn with us. Mr. Snow. Oh no, I'm so excited. I also loved it as well when Haymitch drank the milk. When President Snow was asking for milk, and Haymitch stays in the fridge and he just downs it. He just drinks the entire thing. Oh, I love that. Like, what a little rebel. There's actually already been like so much to talk about. I haven't spoken about absolutely everything. But no, I'm already invested in the characters. I'm already invested in the story. My hopes have not been dashed. We are off to a very, very good start. Okay, I finished part 2. Let's just jump straight into the cliffhanger. So it doesn't turn out to be Luella at all, but a poor girl who nobody really knows where she comes from. That's kind of sad, the fact that you can just take someone and nobody would miss them. And I'm like, what about the fake Luella's family? Like, do they recognize her? Like, it's so tragic. I probably said tragic so many times in this video, so do take a shot every single time I say that. Also, I finished reading part 2 last night and I needed sleep. I'm sorry. It was like midnight by the time I finished part 2. And don't get me wrong, I am still enjoying this very much. It's still far superior to Ballad of the Songbirds and Snakes. I'm just saying. It is easy to see like how samey this kind of story is though, with like Katniss. Like sometimes Haymitch's mind, sometimes the things Haymitch comes out with is very reminiscent of what Katniss says. And obviously when you're in that situation, I'm sure a lot of people think the same thing. So like for instance, when Haymitch thinks, you know, after the initial bloodbath at the cornucopia, he's like, oh, the game makers have gotten enough deaths today, so we should be fine for the rest of the day. Katniss has said that, like, I think in both 1 and 2, she said something similar. Like, it's very easy to have the same kind of thoughts as Katniss in this book. So again, as much as I'm really enjoying this, I am saying some repetition. Obviously, things are definitely different with Haymitch's situation in the games. And obviously, we have different and new characters, like especially with like Ampert and the fact that they're trying to like break the arena. They're trying to break it, which again actually is reminiscent of Catch and Fire. But I never knew there was like even a plot to kind of break the arena in Haymitch's time. I genuinely thought that Katniss was the first person to be a rebel in every sense of the word. So it has actually been very interesting to see like Haymitch try and do that. So yeah, Plutarch, which, I mean, amazing the fact that he has been on our side pretty much since the beginning. Like, he was a bit of a dick to begin with in this book, especially trying to force Haymitch's mother and brother to, like, cry on camera and stuff. Like, that was very exploitative. But he does seem to be on our side. He does seem to be a good guy. So, like, I love the fact that we have that in this book and we see him, you know, from, you know, the rebel stuff that he was doing in Mockingjay and even in Catch and Fire. Like, we see that his roots on the good side has lasted a very long time. And also, the fact that they're trying to break the arena, and we have Haymitch saying, these are the last games, like, I'm going to do this, I really need to do this and stuff. Like, it is very reminiscent of Katniss, but it actually is breaking my heart at the minute because I know Haymitch doesn't achieve that. So, like, can you imagine if in Catching Fire, Katniss doesn't achieve the rebellion? If none of that happened, if she wasn't able to, like, break the arena and pretty much everyone died and then Katniss died, like, could you imagine? Or even not just Katniss died, but she watched everyone die and she had to continue living on like Haymitch did, knowing that she failed. And so it makes more sense now with Haymitch's character that he failed. Like, he hasn't failed yet. Like, that still hasn't happened, but we know he does. We know he doesn't start a rebellion. We know that these aren't the final games. So in a way, Haymitch feels failure, and he has failed. And imagine living with that for, what's it, like 24 years by the time, you know, Katniss comes into the picture. This book literally is Katniss's games if she failed. If she didn't start the rebellion. That just adds a whole other level to it. And now I can understand a little bit more why Haymitch drinks, because he doesn't drink in this. Like, he can make white liquor, and that's handy, I guess. But he does make it, he doesn't really drink it. And he's only 16, so thank God he doesn't drink it. But this is well before his, like, drinking problem. And now I can understand why he wants to drown his sorrows and drink. Why he doesn't really want to mentor District 12 tributes if all they're going to do is die in the arena. And he has to watch that happen year in, year out. And that's his punishment. That is his punishment. So lots to say about part 2, which is still really exciting still. I have no idea what's happening in the Maisley right now, but if what happens in Catching Fire is correct, it does mention something about a friend of Haymitch's from the district reuniting with him, and they work together for a bit, and then she's like killed by these flamingo things, is what I remember from Catching Fire. Whatever death she ends up getting, oh, I'm going to be so devastated about, because she literally is my favorite character. She doesn't give up. With Drusilla, oh my god, like, I freaking love Maisley. She's my favorite. Drusilla stands at the back of the van. All right, you lot, she says, try not to embarrass me. Maisley rallies one last time, as if you needed our help. She is so bitchy. She is so sassy. I freaking love her. We have more songs. And that is not exciting me whatsoever. Oh, when Effie came into it. Okay, I both love the fact that Effie came into it, because she did not have very many lines in the Mockingjay book. She was barely in it. She was on a page. And so this is justice for Effie Trinket. Like, she is an absolute godsend. She is a savior in this book. But the fact that, yeah, she had this connection with Haymitch. Like, she is the one, you know, how Cinna was the last person Katniss sees before she has to go in the tube and go into the games. Well, Effie was Haymitch's. And, like, that is so sweet and lovely. At the same time, I feel like because we have so many characters from the original series, it doesn't feel forced, really. Like, it could be natural. It does feel like it could be natural. I don't know if because we have so many, this is feeling like an all-star season of a reality TV show, which, you know what? It could be the point. It could be the point. We have so many people in this, and I think it is mainly to make fans of the original series happy. I do think, like, when Effie was brought back into this, and you hear her like, oh, that's my cousin Effie Trinket, and she's there, and she's like helping the District 12 tributes. I do think that was more for the fans. And I don't even know how old Effie is in the Hunger Games series, so it could still fit, like, it could still make sense. But yeah, because we have like Mags and Beatty and Wyras and Effie, and essentially just like everyone but the people who aren't born yet, it is a lot. It is a lot. It's like I'm eating a dessert, and the dessert just gets more desserty as I'm eating, which doesn't make, well, that's a shit comparison. But no, I did love seeing Effie. Like, that made me happy, but I don't know if, like, I'm feeling a little bloated with all of the references to the past books. And I don't know if it's more like fan service than it is like an authentic, like, plot device. So, like, I'm still keeping an open mind, because I still, again, love this more than Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes for sure. And I just love being back in this world. Ampert's death destroyed me. It was so sad. I knew it would come, but the fact that he was like torn apart by the freaking mutts, and all that was left was a skeleton. A skeleton. Poor Beatty would have had to watch that. He would have had to watch that. And it is interesting as well that Haymitch is like going into, you know, like the portal bits, like where the mutts come out. Like, he goes into one of them and he like sets off an explosion that, you know, explodes one of the water tanks in order to like help, you know, break the arena. That is so interesting. I love the fact that Haymitch could go inside the arena in those like corridors, and that is so cool. I don't know if he'll do that again. I think that was probably the only time he'll do it. But that was definitely different to Katniss's games, and that was very interesting. I also felt bad for Lulu and her death as well, especially since, you know, like, with them having like used her, there's some kind of like audio thing, and there's also this thing on her chest that is pumping her with drugs. It's like she was just like used and abused by the end. And the fact that she did find Haymitch, oh, she was more like a child really, because it had seemed like she had lost her mind and she wasn't herself anymore. Not that that was the real Luella, but whichever girl it was, whatever her identity was beforehand, had been taken from her. And for her to end up dying that way, and it was very nice of Haymitch to try and, you know, run with her body so that the game makers don't like take her. That was really sweet. And honestly, we see Haymitch with such a massive heart. And oh my gosh, the fact he got a 1. He got a 1 with the game makers, and when he was doing like his little talent thing. A 1. He got a 1. Oh my gosh. When he's telling the other people, oh, it's best, because you know how they're making like the newcomers, like they are a group and they are going to, band against the Koreas. Well, he does like leave them at the very start, but he feels, well, one, he has this mission that Plutarch and Beatty have kind of given him. He doesn't want anyone else to be in danger. He's very selfless in that regard. Like he is very selfless, which when you first meet him in the first Hunger Games book, you wouldn't really assume that. But then you get to know Haymitch and you realize like there is a really good person in there. He's just been abused by the system. He's been abused by the capital. And now look at him. Like this is what they've done to him, So there is like a massive heart in there. And it's just like just knowing how he gets robbed of so much is again like very, very heartbreaking. It is a long torture and we are seeing the origins of that torture. How happiness can just be taken away from all of these innocent people because they have to remember that years and years and years ago, 50 years ago, there was a war and the districts lost and the capital won. And the capital now need to remind them, hey, this is what happens when you try and rise up against us. So awful. And I just knowing that it takes another 25 years for the rebellion to actually happen. I can't help but feel for Haymitch. He's a main character who is going to lose. He's a main character who is not going to achieve what he wanted to achieve. This isn't the last Hunger Games. And poor Wyatt. Like, I haven't mentioned Wyatt that much, to be honest. Like, he is the other District 12 boy, and he's the one where his family, like, bets and stuff. And yeah, he dies during the initial bloodbath, and that's just so sad. That was so sad. Like, he barely had a chance. We barely really got to know him. But the little bit that we did get to know him still made him a bit of a well-rounded character. And yeah, I'm pretty devastated. So that's, and again, like one thing that this book does have over Ballad is that I do have the emotional attachment. So even though I feel like some of it is a little bit samey, which obviously when you have the games themselves, these will be the, I guess like the 4th games that we've seen. We've seen the 74th Hunger Games, we've seen the 75th Hunger Games, we've seen the 10th Hunger Games, and now we're seeing the 50th Hunger Games. So obviously there is going to be a bit of repetition there, so I don't mind that too much. There's only really so much that you can do with it. However, actually someone did suggest this in like one of my Patreon live shows, like how cool it would be if like a book was in like 3rd person and we follow all of the tributes essentially. Like we don't know which one is like the main character and we just like follow them all kind of thing, so you don't actually know who is going to win. And I feel like that could be a very, very cool idea if done correctly. I don't know if we are getting another Hunger Games book. I think someone mentioned there might be like a trilogy of prequels, so we might get Finnick next maybe. And while that would be a great idea, and I love Finnick so much, at the same time, like how can you still make that fresh when you know that he's going to win his games? And yes, it will develop his character more, but can we make it different enough that it justifies an entire book dedicated to him? So I feel like just following a random Hunger Games where you don't know which tribute wins could actually be a really good step in the right direction so that we're not getting the same kind of thing, you know what I mean? So I'm still loving this. Don't get me wrong, I'm still loving this. I'm not being negative, I promise, but I'm not being biased either. Also, the actual arena as well looks very, very gorgeous, very pretty, but the fact that pretty much everything is poisonous does add another level of danger. Like, what are you supposed to do then? Like, how are you going to navigate this arena when everything's poison, essentially? So I like the arena. I think that's pretty cool. But I think that's probably all I can really say about that part. I'm so worried about reading part 3 because I really don't want Maisley to die. I don't want to see it, and I know it's going to happen. I don't want to see Haymitch lose the war. He's winning the battle, and I know he wins the Hunger Games, but just knowing what comes after... the anticipation. The anticipation. Oh, this is so painful. This is so painful. Those last, like, 30-ish pages, in fact, most of the 3rd part, just tore me in two. And while I still stand by the fact that we don't really learn a whole lot of new information with this book, I don't even think, like, you know, the themes that we've explored is done any differently really to previous books. I mean, there was the idea of having a great number of people behind you and rallying behind you help with like an uprising, like, oh, there are more people in the districts than there are in the capital. And so we play with the idea of numbers. And while that was definitely something that was explored more in parts 1 and 2, it didn't really come to much in part 3. But I think that's because we were defeated. Like, it is so devastating to know that the plan does not go to plan. So I will say that, heartbroken again to see Maisley actually die. We knew it was coming. We knew how it was going to happen. And as soon as she said to Haymitch that she was going to go and they were like kind of splitting up for a bit, like she was going to bring the potatoes back, I knew. And then we heard her scream. And then we see her getting devoured by those like birds. And that's exactly what we found out in Catching Fire. And I just didn't want it to be Maisley. I loved Maisley. She has been my favorite character since like Mockingjay. Well, actually, probably like my favorite new character since like Finnick and Joanna in Catching Fire. Because I don't think I had a favorite new character in Mockingjay But like for a favourite new character, my favourite one since Catching Fire. So that was like 3 books ago. She is my Victor, okay? And when Haymitch goes back to District 12 and the 3 coffins that the other tributes were in, like we never got to see that with Katniss and Peter because they both survived. So would Katniss have gone back on that train with Peter in a coffin had, you know, she not done the plan with the berries and she was like the sole victor? Would she have had to come back to District 12 with Peter's body in a box? That is kind of mortifying to think about. But then, of course, knowing that Haymitch would lose his family and the love of his life too, I didn't know like how they would die, so it was still like heartbreaking when Haymitch gets back home and his house is on fire. And his brother and his mother were holding one another, like that's what they say. Did we have to twist a knife in? Did we? We've already been through so much to have that visual of them burning to death and they were holding one another. Oh my gosh. That is just cruel at this point. That is just absolutely cruel. And the fact that Haymitch gave Lenore the sweet, well, that he thought was the sweet, but turned out to be poison. And he's the one who put it in her mouth and she swallowed and she couldn't get it back up and she died. Oh, no wonder Haymitch turned to drink. No wonder Haymitch pushed every single person away. He didn't want anybody else to get hurt. The amount of death that happened around him. President Snow, I'm coming for you. I mean, I know you're already dead. Especially since in the epilogue, we do have it be set after Mockingjay, like during the time of like them writing in the memorial book and Katniss and Peter and Haymitch all living together. So it was really cool to see Katniss speak. I love that so much. Just another person to add to our cameo appearances. And yeah, I mean, again, like still, it was all very entertaining. I did really enjoy the end. I loved the showdown between Haymitch and Silke. That was very, that was very tense and I enjoyed seeing that. What I did not enjoy seeing was Silke holding up Welly's head. Poor Welly, that was awful. I didn't feel as much of an attachment to Welly as I did like the other tributes, like Amperd for instance. But Haymitch says, I could live 10,000 years and never erase this sight from my memory. Same. It's almost fun to say the game's come to an end. Absolutely. But I still don't think we really got too much new things. Like we do see the fact that the Capitol have changed a lot of the stuff that happened and they've edited it a certain way to present it to the Capitol, to the districts, like in the highlights at least, in a way that doesn't show the Capitol up. And they've heavily edited it. They're making you see what they want you to see, which again is very apt. It is a huge commentary on propaganda and what people show us, like what the media show us as we're consuming that media on television, on the internet. Like we are being presented something in a very catered way, just like how we are getting presented the games in a very catered way. So much of it is not actually accurate, which does help with the whole part in Catching Fire when Katniss and Peter are watching the games and they are telling us what happens exactly. There were a few deviations from that, which is explained by the fact that it was doctored. Like so much of it was doctored to make it look a certain way. So I totally get that. I totally appreciate that. I still feel like, I don't know, like, so this is how I probably would have loved this book. Part 1, the games. Like we just start with Haymitch in the games. And it could be during the final few days. It could be maybe just before Maisley is attacked. Or maybe it's like when he's with Maisley and they're talking and we get so much of her. And we get like flashbacks to the reaping. We get flashbacks to the train ride. We get those flashbacks while Haymitch is in the games and only spend part 1 on the games. Maybe even go into part 2. But then I would have loved to have seen, you know, a little bit more embellishment with him and his family when he gets back home and his love, of course, leading to him, you know, having his breakdown. And then maybe like part 3, even just a part of part 3 where it gets to him becoming a mentor and him having to see these tributes die year in, year out, year in, year out. And then we could have seen like some new things with what happened with Haymitch after his Hunger Games and before he meets Katniss and Peter. And it would have been great as well, maybe if we ended the book with Haymitch walking into that train cart and seeing Katniss and Peter, and that's when we first ever met him properly in the Hunger Games series. And then maybe that's when the book ends, kind of thing. I don't know, like I felt like that could have been like a really cool secular kind of way of doing this story, and we would have gotten like some new things, some like new perspectives, some new insights into that. Like, I already feel awful for Haymitch 100%. I already feel so devastated for him. I didn't need to feel more emotional for him. I didn't need to feel more sympathy because I already felt it. This is like purposefully reading something that you know is going to upset you, and it did. Like, it upset me how cruel this world is and the treatment of Haymitch in general. So I will say I do love the fact that I know Haymitch more as a person, and I understand him more as a person now, and you know, seeing him turn to drink and all of that. I didn't love the repetition of the Quoth the Raven Nevermore sections, because that was quite a lot in that final chapter. It just kept being, well, not exactly repeated, it was like the entire part of the Quoth the Raven Nevermore, I think, from Edgar Allan Poe. Like, that was just like kind of pasted in just every now and then. It was just a big section. I just kept skipping those. I'm not gonna lie. I kept skipping those sections of Quoth the Raven Nevermore. That was starting to get annoying. There was also a bit of a reach, I think, when someone is singing on television and they're singing about the reaping. So I think it was probably the girl from Songbirds and Snakes, who I've forgotten her name now, but she was obviously like friend to Lucy Bard, and she's singing, and Haymitch is like, oh, could this be District 12's one and only Victor? Suddenly I'm sure she is. No wonder Lenore Dove never wants to talk about her. And then he goes into this whole mathematical equation thing where he kind of deduces that President Snow and Lucy, the victor of the 10th Hunger Games, had a fling. Like, they loved one another. And I don't know, it just felt like it was a little bit of a reach. Like, it really did feel like it was a little bit too forced to get Haymitch to be more insightful than he is. Like, the amount of times he said about, like, President Snow and the poison, like, him poisoning people as well. I'm like, how does Haymitch know about him poisoning people? At this time, when he's 16 years old and he already knew about, like, Snow poisoning people and stuff. Like, I don't know, there was just some things that I think it was a bit of a reach for Haymitch to already know this, or like come to that conclusion. And again, like, while I did love a lot of the cameo appearances, some of them felt a little bit forced. Oh, I've just been flicking through there just to see if there's anything else I could pick up on. The fact that Haymitch and Maisley then become like brother and sister, and he would say, thank you, sis, and like he would call Maisley sis, that got me as well. That got me as well. I loved it. I love the fact that she ended up becoming a sort of sister to Haymitch and even Ampert. I just freaking love her. I love her. The ladybugs bit was fine. The porcupine bit was fine. Yeah, it just, a lot of the game stuff was fine. I just wish we never knew about it, honestly, like at all. I really do wish that part in Catching Fire was edited out in future prints, because then at least it won't like negate a lot of the reasons why this book exists. But I still really enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed it more than Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I'm going to give Sunrise on the Reaping 3 stars. It wasn't up to the same standard as, again, like the first 3 books. I'm still so happy and glad that this exists. It's not the rating I was hoping for, but it honestly could have been worse, and I was dreading it being worse, and it just wasn't. It was still a very good time, and it gave me Maisley, okay? It gave me Maisley. If I'm even saying her name right, I'm probably saying it wrong this entire time. Like, what a fake fan I am. So that, my friends, is all 5 of the Hunger Games books. Well, the first 4 reread, and Sunrise on the Reaping read for the first time. And I loved my experience reading all these again so much. I love this world. Still one of my favorite series of all time, even with Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes being only a 2-star for me and Sunrise being a 3. I still have such fond feelings and memories of this series. There's definitely a lot of nostalgia here, but I still think the initial trilogy holds up to this day, and I can't stop singing its praises. I freaking love this world so much. Suzanne Collins, thank you so much for making this series. Thank you so much for everything you do. Please give me more. I will still eat it up. Anything you produce, I will eat up. And please, can I get a special edition of Sunrise on the Reaping to match the other 4? And if you're watching this and you haven't read the series before, and you just watched this just to get some spoiler-filled thoughts, and you kind of are thinking of reading the series now, all I will say is may the odds be ever in your favor. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave all the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know what you think of the Hunger Games series. Do you have a favorite book in the series? Do you have a favorite character in the series? Is there anything you agreed with me about? Is there anything you disagreed with me about? Please tell me everything down below. I really want to talk Hunger Games and Panem and Katniss and everyone with you. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel. If you'd like to join my Patreon, then the link is in the description box. But yeah, I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.